Well, we wanted to create some space to talk about the successes of each community. Richard, are you online? I think we're planning on starting with Gardner, but I don't know if you all can hear us.
I do not see a Richard.
No, Richard's iPad.
Great, Whitefish it is. Cool. We'll just cycle through the community, and I don't know who from Whitefish wants to speak to this.
I'm gonna take this on and see
Awesome.
how well I do. I'm not as good a public speaker. But, and I've only been with, Whitefish for like 3 years or so, but well, I'm gonna start with in our budget document. One thing that Dana has done is create a list of all of the projects over time since the beginning of the inception of resort tax, of all the projects that have been completed. And so every year it gets added to, but I'm just throwing that out there just because I feel like it's good for your public to have a crack at seeing that list every year, So with that said, this project that we have up here, this information was provided by our awesome public Parks and Recreation Director. And so you can see on there, it says that it's the Armory Park Master Plan. And as was pointed out earlier, Whitefish really has places a lot of value on their Parks and Recs facilities. And so this has been an ongoing project. And we have partnered with the Land Water Conservation Fund. We had some grant money there. And once you get money, you get more money sometimes. So, resort tax is great for leveraging that way. But again, our parks director is diligent and vigilant about applying for other funds. So we had the opportunity to partner in order to put all of these elements in place. And so she's got listed there phase 3, had a total cost of $1,030,000, and 514 of that was through the grant funds. And so she's put a 1.7 mile loop around the park. The playground is in there. We had the dog park in Whitefish gets lots of use. And
It's a world-class dog park. That's
right. I mean, it's an amazing facility, and some people go there every day. I mean, there's a lot of elements in that park. It would be like a smaller bench, smaller dogs, and all that. But it
like beer crowd.
right. I mean, it's an amazing. Well, we talked about whether or not we're going to block the view with other elements or railroad crossings and things like that. Like it's a huge consideration. And then all of that infrastructure that like Daryl was referring to, like the drainage improvements. We put a new irrigation well in, and that was just I thought we just did that last year, but maybe time's going by faster than I realized. Phase 4 is what we're working on now, and so we're gonna add some parking. They're gonna have a small child playground and a new picnic area. There's a lot of land that's associated with this project, and so they're gonna develop a softball field. That's been a long time in the making, I think, in terms of coming to consensus and deciding on that particular use. And then there's gonna be a large pavilion for community gatherings. But like I said, Whitefish really values their parks and recreation facilities, and so that's what we're doing with that money, or some of it.
Laney, how does the decision making around a project like this happen? There's 3 different types of implementations of a resort tax and governance. So Whitefish obviously is a municipal government that oversees the use of the funds. A district like what Big Mountain and Gardner and Big Sky are governed by an elected board. And then there's resort areas. I don't think we have any in here that are administered by the county, but very curious. Oh, Hebden's also a district, aren't you?
Oh.
Yeah, we're a district. What's that? Great. Was that,
There's a Craig at,
Craig's a resort area, yep, I don't think we have anyone in here from Craig. St. Regis, I think is a district, but, Wolf Creek is an area. So Lady, how does that process work?
Well, what happens in Whitefish is that we have the resort tax monitoring committee. And so, the public works, the public works director and the parks and recreation director show up to those meetings and they give, monthly updates on the projects that have been approved. And then they also, make recommendations to the committee. There's a lot of consulting work and engineering work that goes into, prospective projects. And then the committee really does, ask questions and provide input and then provide approval, for the project. But the ultimate, I think, approval comes from the council and by virtue of putting those discussed projects in the budget. And for funding too, because so much of what Maria does often come with grant funds, like partnership funds and other agencies that we're working together with. The discussion at the Haskell Basin Trail was a testament to how many players were involved in terms of working together towards that easement, but I think that sometimes access to additional funds also kind of moves things up the list in terms of priority because we have that money now for that purpose. I think that's.
I think the only other thing I'd add on parks specifically, we have a park board also. And so the park board has the authority to basically determine how parks are managed and what improvements go into parks, but then council has the ultimate say on the financing side of it. So Armory Park, this whole project, all of Maria's items for her capital projects for our resort tax goes through the park board first, actually, then goes to the resort tax committee, then goes to council. So this actually has like a free body oversight, just in our parks.
Cool, then that happens, ultimate decision with your budget process. I
Yes,
think.
so council will approve the budget, the final budget in August of every year, and then that's when.
Great.
So we got the transparency box.
Richard, do we have you online?
Richard's back if you want to go back.
Yeah, yes, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. We've spent money in a number of different ways, but highlight here, fire truck as really a big ticket item. We were amazed at how convoluted the funding for this fire truck got. The fire department, it's a volunteer fire department, but they have a little bit of property tax revenue from the county assigned to them, so that they had a little bit of money to put into it to start with. But with the first, we had to primarily provide the cash for them to even schedule the assembly of the truck, the wheels, the frame, and the drivetrain, which then went to the outfit that put a fire truck on it. We're still paying for this because every year we have the annual payment on our appropriation schedule and come up with it. We had two clapped out fire trucks. The other one got replaced through a FEMA grant. But we would have had no new fire trucks if it hadn't have been for FEMA money being available for one and us being able to foot the bill basically for the other. And down at the other end of the scale, we do things like come up with the upfront cost to have our annual Shakespeare in the Parks thing, which is a great little community benefit. Doesn't cost a whole lot, but is useful for just community, if nothing else. And I didn't really have time to go through another project that's an ongoing one. Gardner being what it is, not having a local government of any sort, we operate, say, have to operate in partnership with other organizations. We can do some with the county. Hope to do more. The sewer and water district is actually a county entity with a local board, like the resort tax board. Uh, uh, and we they're responsible for coming up with a project and then asking us for partial funding for it through other sources, like the fee for service and some other grants that they can work in. And through that, we're completely overhauled the waste treatment plant, and the basically 50-year-old underground infrastructure is getting replaced bit by bit, and its efficiencies are being improved through contributions from the resort tax. We also partner with nonprofit organizations to do things for the school district. For the Greater Gardner Community Council is responsible for what used to be the Eagles Hall, which is now sort of the community center for events and stuff like that. And they've got a project that over years is going to cost a bunch of money. We're putting in money here and in bits and drabs as they phase into the project, and while seeking grants from other entities, most of them non-governmental entities that help fund that.
Thanks, Richard. And you do an annual grant process, is that correct?
Yeah, right. The only thing that's on a multi-year project is the 1% add-on that we voted in, that is going to the sewer and water district for the treatment plant overhaul. It's not all of the money involved there either by any means, but it's a major part of facilitating that project. When it's paid off in another couple, 3 years, the 1% will become available, and we're doing a lot of job owning with the county to get them to come up with some sort of integrated infrastructure plan that we can put the 1% into, provided they would have to be the operating entity to do things like major overhauls on our streets in town, other than the federal highways. And that so
Thanks, Richard.
I'm not sure I've got them completely convinced yet that they have to stop showing up and asking us for practically all of our money for our street project. That they have to have a general plan and integrate it and figure out how to fund it on their side. The session coming up about bonding is one that we can't answer, really. We just don't have enough revenue, but the county can if they look at what we can put into it.
Thanks, Richard. Dave.
All right, Red Lodge, and I kind of picked out projects. Well, knowing that we have a lot of new folks here, I wanted to kind of share some thoughts. Maybe some of them are little Dave-isms, but one of them is leveraging your reserve tax dollars to get the most out of them. So if you look at the pool is now a completed project. Having said that, we did bond the pool. So we had a 20-year bond on that. So we'll be making payments. There's about $100,000 a year going to our payments. And then the operation costs are like $90,000 a year. But we get some of that from fees back, but we're still putting $60,000 a year. Pools are not a money-making operation. And then the tennis courts on the upper right there is something that'll be a one-time payment, actually. So we were basically like seed money. They came and wanted to, it's city land. But resort tax is going to be allocating $200,000 for that. And they've about raised the other million, so this is something that'll be, so this will basically be $200,000. And we'll have a million plus facility that's built. Will actually be, we're building this up in our equivalent of your big park in Whitefish. It's up, Coal Miners is up by the high school. So this is actually up by the high school. We'll have an MOU with them for the maintenance. So like I said, there were two kind of messages I wanted to share for the new folks is A, leverage your money. But then the second one, and this is true of municipalities in general, but I think it also comes into play in terms of resort tax. And when I was on council, it was one of my fears. Municipalities have this tendency to spend money like first year college graduates. I can afford the payment, therefore I can afford it. And so they get 2 new cars in the boat and then everything else, and then they don't realize they've taken away their ability to make any new decisions and address things and come up with the future. So I really like cash purchases. Down below, the vacuum truck took a year for it to come in, but that 523, 100% out of resort tax, no financing costs, nothing from property taxes, nothing onto water bill. So that's a one and done sort of thing that's there. I'm really trying to get to the spot where I'm looking at longevity. We're looking at having to start paying some fire protection out of resort tax. We can do capital. We can't do salaries or anything, but we can do some capital. I really like what Whitefish is doing, like where you have a percentage for parks or a percentage for trails. I think we've done dollars kind of repeatedly, but I like the percentage better because then it'll grow. But if you have an off year, it's kind of built into that. But again, when I break it down, I have like allocated, like obligated, which is like bond service and debt payments. And it really scares me, just like buying a house. It really scares me if that gets, anything above 25, 50%, how much cash do you have on hand in your emergency fund to cover that. But the idea of obligating all your resort tax to payments, so you can't do anything new in the next 20 years seems like a bad idea. And we all got a wake up call when COVID hit, or this last year when no snow hit. So.
Thanks, Dave.
What's your annual revenue?
We have the 4% now, and so those numbers, we're about 1.5 million, but that includes our 4%. So we're like 1.2. So we're couch change to Whitefish and Big Sky. But it's larger than our property taxes. So we make more from resort tax than we do from property tax. So.
Send me your couch.
Pardon?
Send me your couch. Send me your couch.
We've already cleaned the change out.
So in Big Sky, we run, depending on the year, anywhere from 2 to 4 grant programs. The 2 projects that we're highlighting are through our annual grant cycle. And similar, since we are a district, it's a lot of folks coming to us and requesting projects. It's not projects that BizRad is executing themselves. So the 2 projects we picked kind of vary in scale and complexity, I would say, but they've all been really cool projects. One thing I would say that's unique about the grant programs that we run in Big Sky is that we see a lot of year-over-year requests for ongoing programming, and I would kind of tie that back to the property tax offset. Those are services in our community provided by nonprofits that would maybe be provided by a government elsewhere. But a couple ones that we picked today, there's more information over there, but every year, just lost my train of thought for a second, sorry. But this Alpenscapes is a relatively new program in Big Sky. It's actually been really cool to see it come to light. It's a collaborative project. It's something that our board has always pushed is collaboration, especially in this conservation space. We saw a lot of entities kind of working in silos, doing similar projects with similar outcomes. And then all these groups have come together, and I'm not a very conservation expert, so if I get it wrong, I'm sorry. It's integrating fire safety and being responsible stewards of water, and then I think like trout friendly landscaping in Big Sky, which is a hard task because a lot of those are in direct conflict of each other. And it's been neat to come about, and every year someone comes in and asks for the money and it's come to light and now this guidebook came out and they're kind of working well with HOAs and integrating it to kind of make Big Sky the model of how to landscape that's checking all of these boxes of making sure you're doing the right thing to protect your house and the environment. And I think as a lot of you all know, just the insurance and the wildfire and all that is a very hot topic in our community. And then the other project, which is slightly larger in scale, our local vet in Big Sky is much more than a local vet, and she is wonderful, but we don't have a shelter or anything like that. And part of what they have taken on as the vet clinic is if someone gets hurt or if there's an accident or something bad happens, they have to take in any stray animals or injured animals or things like that. So they came to us, they've created a nonprofit, and so they're building a new building, which will house the private vet as well as the nonprofit side to make sure that the pets, as a pet owner, the most important part of my life, are taken care of. And it's been another project that I would say is very collaborative. It's been neat to see it get built. They're building housing above it as well, and which is very, very special. And they've been a hard time finding folks working there, and it's going to be pet friendly housing because the folks working in the vet typically have pets. But these are just kind of two different projects, I would say, that both highlight things that our board and our community really focuses on with collaboration and matching funds and like meeting the needs of the community and the things that kind of speak to people's heartstrings, but keep us safe as a community as well.
So how does Big Sky handle our annual grant making?
I would say our grant cycle is a lot similar to a philanthropic foundation. We open up applications. I encourage you all to grab. This is our brochure that we put out to the public as well. We evaluate them. We put out an open call and folks apply. As staff, it's our job to internally review them. And then the board ultimately makes the decision. Some people would say the decision-making meetings are the most exciting part of the year. Big Sky, as you all know, it's a very public process. And there's questions getting answered in the public. But it's a large, and it grows every year, a very, very large grant making program, but we've got great partners in Big Sky doing a lot of this great work. What else am I missing?
My very first grant cycle, I remember the high school baseball team getting brought onto stage and 30 public comments coming from each baseball player. So it is a very spicy
Yeah,
discussion.
it's always exciting.
And Mayor Westwood, I forgot to ask you, so you, through the town council budgeting process, obviously allocate your funds, but I think you have an advisory council?
So we have a resort tax board that's an advisory only. They don't make the assignments and recommendations. And a lot of the other boards, so like the Parks Board goes to them with requests. The Trails goes to them, Public Work goes to them, and they do that. Historically, we've kind of pretty much always just kind of gone that. I think this year my forecast is that we're gonna throw a wrench in things a little bit and exercise the mayor builds a budget which council approves process a little bit more than what we've done, but there's because we have some shifts that I think need to be coming. So yeah, it's an advisory board and it's good, but a lot of those advisory boards occasionally need to be reminded that they're advisory boards.
So you're in a period of transition, is what I
No, I don't even know is that we're in a period of what I would call reality snap.
Okay.
And he's going after the wrong couch. It's not our. I said we're Whitefish's couch change, not that's our couch change. So it's their couch you want, not ours.
West Yellowstone.
So this one is just near and dear to us since we just had a big community engagement this last weekend on this again. But our old parks plan was a little over 15 years old, I believe, and our community has changed. The dynamic of our community has kind of changed too, right? People that are the decision makers. So before we were kind of stuck in this rut of what our parks are gonna look like, what's the next project, what's the maintenance needed. Cause you're dealing with a really, really old plan. And so we are able to, look at that and have new eyes, new community engagement. And we had these huge sheets of paper all over our tables. We've all done these community engagements, right? And people putting stickers and write notes and everything like that. But it was really important as we partnered with our town cleanup too on that. But we have hired our planner that's doing this. He's done a great job, but it's really exciting as I'm working on the budget for the next year and thinking 5, 10 years ahead. These are the things that people can see, touch, experience, and they don't always see that with our resort tax dollars. And it's important for us to do that, not just for our tourists, but for our community members, right? They always like, okay, well, here we go, 4%, 4%, 4%, but they want that experience. And our parks are a great place to do that. Obviously with West Yellowstone, resort tax is our existence. And so it's hard just to pick one project, but this is like just a fun one that we're really getting our community back involved in and seeing what they want for the next 10 years.
And how does your process work in terms of allocating funds? Is it tied to your budget or?
Yeah, so this is coming out of our general fund, resort tax, and then out of the parks. That's the thing.
Where did you go get a master parks plan for $18,000?
Our city planner is helping us out with that.
Okay, so it's an existing planner, this was just additional money for outside work, okay. I say that's a steal for a master plan, so.
Yeah, he does extremely great job, but we have an advisory board, our Parks and Rec advisory board, that's really spearheading this project too, so it's not just on Scott. You know, these people have kind of drafted some plans and he's just making it happen.
Shane, why you don't have money yet? What are you gonna do with the money when you get it?
Well, now that we just had the vote, like I said earlier today, adding education and community impacts, before it was pretty limited. You can only go for fire, EMS and medical. But now since the vote passed, that kind of expands that. So we're just in the process right now, that's gonna be the start of, next month's meeting. Of, all right, how are we going to start defining how we split up this money? And that we take in, and so, we're not reinventing the wheel, we're stealing parts from Big Sky and how, I think that there's, that, how we make that happen is, basically along those similar lines,
And when do you anticipate first grant making or allocating the funds?
We started collecting January 1. We have been getting some revenue in through the winter since January, but we really have, this month right now is gonna be the start of our significant revenue coming in. And so we don't know what those numbers are, and so it's kind of hard to start drawing plans of what we're gonna do with the money.
Before you have the money.
Before we know what that money is.
Sure.
My best guess, is, and I've said this all along, and this was just kind of an educated decision, or an educated guess. But I was anticipating we were gonna pull in somewhere between 550 and 600,000 in RT money. I'm cautious and still conservative, but I'm thinking that number's probably gonna go to, I'm guessing maybe 6 to 7.
Oh, wow.
By the time the first year is complete. We did, as we're putting this together, kind of trying to make sure, we're getting the business that's licensed and whatnot. And so kind of putting together numbers. And so I classify a unit as like a motel room, a cabin, a nightly rental, those types of things. And then a trailer spot or a campsite is the other side. And so as of right now, we have 260 units registered and 600 campsites.
Nice.
And I'm anticipating the campsite number will probably grow by at least 400 more. And I'm thinking we'll probably get the unit numbers up by another 50 to 75 by the time it's all
and just out of curiosity, is the Hebgen district, does that abut against the city? Do you have kind of?
Well, according to the map, it
Yeah.
does.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it encompasses everything around the town, but everything around the town it's either national park or national forest.
Right.
So, I mean, cause, the district is really made up of pockets of private property scattered around.
Yeah. Big Mountain, I think.
So we're actually gonna sign a check probably on July 1. The first installment of about $400,000. And then this fall, we'll start doing the granting process for nonprofits and others. The first year is a learning cycle for us. The following year should be interesting because then we won't have to fund the cash reserve or not nearly as much. So we'll have a significantly larger amount to go, and we're engaged with prospective grantees now.
Yes, sir.
Do you guys have the same problem that Big Sky has? What's your level of enforcement to keep, where's your teeth to keep people from just thumbing their nose at you and saying, we're not collecting nor relaying on a resort tax? So like in a municipality, we give you business registration, we won't give it to you next year if you're not doing it, and therefore you can't be in business, whether it be a vacation rental or anything else. Where's your teeth for any sort of enforcement and compliance come from?
Well, as you go through, resort tax is a MCA state law, that kind of stuff. But, it really boils down to, if they push the issue, we're gonna have to take it to court.
Just a show of hands, how many folks invest in fire in some form or fashion or plan to invest in fire?
Okay, planned, yeah, but we don't as of yet, but it's approved to.
Just looking at some commonalities here, wastewater and water. Commonality there. I mean, roads. Commonality there.
But the comment, caution on wastewater and sewer and such, somebody else mentioned it too. That stuff that's underneath the ground doesn't go anywhere near as nice as, make sure you put a sign above it that says project. Here's for your resort tax, because people like to see, our pool was coming up right when we were renewing our resort tax, and I'm sure that was a significant part of getting it renewed.
So, speaking of a deal, your pool seems like you got a pretty good deal on that pool.
Yeah, we got a $3 million pool and we paid less than $1.5 million for it, because that most of it is donations and or grants. And I look around the room, that's nothing new. We collect less than $1 million in property tax. Our budget last year was 25 million. The story of small cities is doing stuff with other people's money.
Well, I think
You were sitting around the room and asking about the funding areas, how about housing?
Oh, yeah. How many have invested in housing? Commonality there. Yeah, we need to equip Daryl with all of these examples when he's out there engaging with legislators. Well, great. We have a 10-minute break, and then we're going to jump into kind of a round robin of hot topics. And this is where hopefully we can just talk about all the fun stuff that's been in the back of your mind that hasn't wedged into any of these specific sessions. So I think food is ready to roll. And we'll reconvene here in 10 minutes. Sorry.
And then I'll make sure Jenny gets her. Oh, I don't know what that screen's doing.
Is anyone even looking at that screen?
I am, because that's when I know our camera has died. Oh. I need to re-engage.
Who's got a hot topic they want to discuss? IT?
How can you run a meeting remote and in person and streamline on YouTube effectively? Does everybody have problems? Because I tell you what, IT is so hard.
That's
a great question.
Oh, that's speaking of what we do is there's a meeting that's running and then you just make everybody code for sharing on it. Who is?
I just signed in on the code, I'm not.
I just joined, I'm guessing this had just joined the Zoom meeting, Tammy, did you send it somewhere here? Is it just email or how did you do it?
Well, Dave, when you're done with that, we're gonna make you answer the question. So, live stream, have online public engagement, and then an in-person, mainly an in-person component.
Duct tape, bubble gum.
Yeah, we've been doing it, but it's just like, we've taken away the live stream because it's, a challenge to get them syncing, and then we've had issues with voice and like when the sound's working, so. We've, I think every community probably struggles with like stuff like that, but I think. We're just, we're getting there, we haven't had a live stream back. No, I actually have more of a resort kind of like that. Thought that I questioned when we get there, all the stuff they there.
I think, at least when Jenny's right, it's, at least with us, bubble gum and duct tape that we pull together.
Somehow.
What I think is helpful though on the streaming stuff is just to have really clear guidelines up front on how to engage, like raising your hand is pretty important.
Yeah, one thing that we do, I guess it's different, we use Zoom webinar a lot versus a Zoom meeting, just so that you can control. The audience, and you don't have the one person that forgets to hit the mute button before they're talking to their kid or their dog or something in the background. So they do have to raise their hand, they just don't have a free for all, which it does help. And it's nice to be on the other side, you're not like, oh shoot, did I forget to mute, before they walked in the house or something. The webinar has been helpful for us, because then you can control it. You're not necessarily limiting it, because they can still log on and listen to it.
So
But
is
you're-
webinar the name of the program or the
It's just,
platform?
It's through Zoom.
it's through Zoom, it's
It
just
is
like,
Zoom, yeah.
it's like college campuses use it a lot, it's more one-way communication that. It's still
Okay.
two-way, but it's controlled two-way communication, I guess I would say, versus a free-for-all two-way.
And the chat's not enabled, and so when someone raises their hand,
Yeah,
they get promoted essentially.
I'll have them either raise their hand or turn on their camera, because we'll have something up on the side so you can see kind of what cameras are there. Yeah, you've got to have somebody running up a separate that's kind of watching and learn the value of the co-host. So set up your host that's recording. And then this is actually just a guest. This is just somebody who's joined the meeting and is sharing their screen, but that's not. I'm shuffling down here, raising hands, I'm raising hands. When somebody's saying I can't see, then we notice the camera's out, so.
Okay.
It's not something you do on a single machine very well,
We have a whole system where we have cameras in the room that are built in that have to be used at the same time, ours is really complicated.
I don't know, but it was something to explore. Maybe we can employ this.
The webinar, yeah. we put in.
Who else has a hot topic? Mayor Westbrook.
I'm gonna go back to, just kind of allocation for resort tax and not being a first year college graduate. I'm curious what, if anybody has caps on. How much of your resort tax is pre-obligated out, meaning on bond payments or something else? What are some of the other numbers or percentages that other communities go with?
That's a great question.
So when I start the budget process, obviously we look at wages first off, right? We wanna make sure people are paid. First, second is our debt management, so we have bonds. Right now, currently, we have a loan for 80 acres that we purchased 10 years ago. And then I'll discuss this at our next session, but our wastewater treatment plant bonds. So I have to make sure that that's paid first. So for me, those kind of go hand in hand, right? Those two things have to be paid, our wages and our bonds. So do I have a percentage? No, but I know those numbers, I have the amortization schedules. And then like this year, we'll be putting an extra towards our principal on the 80 acres.
We have no bonds outstanding right now.
Yeah, I was surprised and I like when somebody else said they're paying cash for something, and I like that, that's when we renewed it, that was one of my biggest concerns, is that people were gonna go through and basically obligate all of it, and then we don't have the ability to make any decisions as stuff comes up that we have to deal with, or worse, you go backwards really quickly. If something goes down.
The one thing that, and why I'm excited about the next session on bonding is that. I think
Said
there's-
no one ever.
Right.
This is the person who announced last night on the reserve tax that property tax was sexy on the hike, so.
Yeah, right. So we have 10% of our resort tax goes to housing, and I think there's certain situations where bonding is gonna be really useful when you need the money now to address the problem versus later. And so that, you know, I don't see us ever using our resort, like bonding resort tax for streets or parks. But for the housing portion, I think there is a potential to bond a portion of that 10% of our 3%, so not all of it, but a portion of it to get some more money up front, to address the housing crisis we have now, instead of having to wait the 20 years to collect it. And so I think there are times where bonding is important, but I agree, it shouldn't be a huge portion of it, because you do have things, it shouldn't be a whole portion, it should be some of it. Because there is benefit to, in some scenarios, of when you want more money now than, well, let's wait 10 years so we have enough money for housing, well, problems now on, and 10 years will probably just be worse, quite honestly, so how do we get that money now? So that is why I'm very excited for this next session.
Oh, for all of you new people, as you do your budgets, this is huge, 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 huge. Stop chew and whatever and hear this. Make sure you way over budget on, particularly you say you're guessing at $500 or $600, your budget needs to be at least $1 million. Because if you don't have it in the budget, you don't get to use it. And so don't make it something you depend on. So like ours has a pay off the pool early sort of a thing, or pay off debt services. So if we suddenly have a year where it jumps up 400,000, 500,000 in 1 year, which is what happened a few years ago, we went through all the process of giving it back as additional property tax relief. I don't know if that's specific to how ours is written. I think that's the state, that's MCA that say if it's not in your budget, you don't get to use it and it goes back. So there's a trick in building your budget. You don't spend it until you've got it, but make sure that however good you think it is gonna be, go 25-30% above that, so that if you have a knockout killer year, you can do something with that money. But that if you don't get it, you didn't depend, like I said, for ours, it's the pay everything off early thing. And right now, the one reason our pool isn't paid off is because we got it back when the interest rate was so cheap that it would be stupid of us to pay it off right now. And that's why we, rather than financing the sub truck, we just paid cash for it. But yeah, that would be probably one of our biggest learning curves we ever had, is we had $400,000 we had to give back because we were being cautious in our resort tax budget. Well, there's being cautious, which is wise, and then there's whoops, we did it the wrong way on paper.
Kristen, what about Big Sky Impact?
So we approved our operating budget in April. We will have a couple of amendments to make to it, but as we go into the end of our fiscal year, I start looking at our available funds sheet. So we have, cash in the bank, and we pull out all of our commitments. We will have bond payments coming up starting in July, and then we're paying off a property as well in July. And once we get that number at the bottom of the spreadsheet, that's kind of what we roll into our allocation meetings with in October, and that's what we have to work with for grants. But yeah, pulling out all the commitments, the interlocal agreements that are multi-years, and kind of get down to the bottom of the spreadsheet, and that's what we have to work with. And that's the number that everyone's like clamoring for, like how much more is they're gonna do.
So we have 3-year interlocal agreements, kind of our categorically recipients into nonprofits and then government entities that we have those interlocals with, and interlocals, so kind of that comes off the top first and foremost. Then our debt service comes off the top as well. We do have a reserves strategy, which we're actually intending on paying off. One of our bonds that used the 3% money within 3 years is our objective in paying that debt quickly. But we do try to use cash when we can. It's just sometimes it's just too.
What is your on-hand cash reserves? Like what percentage of your,
I don't know what the percentage is, it's around 5 million. 5 million,
of 25, so yeah, so that's.
20%.
Yeah, ish,
We're holding about 30%.
and I think ours is, actually, I think. Our balance actually shows it's like. A full year's, which I think is over, I think we're doing it, but there's that fear of what happens if no money comes in too, so.
Do all of you use resort tax for operations, like salaries, wages?
We don't get to because of our ordinance, the only thing that it changed to was we have one position, so we have one position that's. Half of his time is paid out of parks and half of it's paid or spent on streets, that's the only operations cost we had out of all of our resort. So it's all capital.
So I think that reserve conversation, like what your cash reserves are, matters more when you have those operating costs. For us, it's capital only, some maintenance. But for us, our reserves, we want our resort tax in and out the door if that's possible. And so we don't hold much reserves. We will, in some situations, like when we have the 2% for our Whitefish Trail, being a nonprofit and we know that money is going to them, I'm cautious about years that we might not have good collection or we assume what we would have. So we're having them spend, we collect the money one year, we let them spend it the next year. So that's the only thing we're doing there. But in parks and public works, we allow them maybe spend the money we're gonna collect that year for bigger projects, but we're like, hey, we gotta watch this as the year goes on. But we don't really focus on reserves in our resort tax fund just because ours is primarily capital and the maintenance is just like pretty new and not salaries. It's more like, hey, we can actually overlay some of our paths that we have that need it, but those things could be cut if we didn't have money.
We've made an intentional shift of trying to focus more on core infrastructure and capital investment and rather less of our dollars going towards salaries and positions. We still do a fair amount of that. The disadvantages when it's a salary position and then you're having a discussion in a grant process, get people on stage that are like, my job is gone if you don't fund this. That's a really difficult conversation to have in public.
Yeah.
So,
And I would extend that as a new entity, that we will be having nonprofits come to us for both operating expenses and project expenses. Project expenses are easy because you can define those and characterize those, and they're not repeatable. And the question is, how do you think the grant process when agencies are approaching you for operating funds, knowing that two things: one, that is directly affecting wage issues, and that there will be an expectation of ongoing funding. So how do you wrestle with that?
we use a scoring apparatus when we're going through, and we call that an annuity in our scoring apparatus. And we don't give as many points to a request that is coming at us every year.
I'd say one thing that we're working on too, and we work closely with we have 3 community foundations in Big Sky. And part of it I would say is capacity building of these nonprofits. I think there's been a shift in grant making that salaries are mission delivery at times, but it's kind of helping them understand what are the actual costs for program delivery that are actual straight operation and getting them to understand what salary is just rent needs to happen no matter what, but your camp counselor salary, that's mission delivery, that's a program, you need that camp counselor in order to run the program, so it's an ongoing conversation that we have as funders in the community, kind of educating people of your expenses and how you categorize them and making sure that the nonprofits themselves have a clear understanding of what is operating and what's not.
Yeah, on the nonprofit front, we use the 990s pretty heavily and try to align with how the foundations are looking at administrative costs versus program delivery. And you're right, there's staff positions that are directly delivering a program.
Yeah.
That's a little bit different than admin, I guess it's the same way to qualify. Good conversation.
How do you combat use it or lose it type thinking where people are. Maybe spending money not the wisest way possible because they're afraid that it's gone if they don't and they're not gonna get it next year and et cetera.
What do you guys think?
Are you talking about like nonprofits that are getting grants or?
Just any parks. You know,
Yeah, I don't think I would say like, it's pretty clear, and I have two directors that have been in the position for a while, for Parks and Public Works, but. Everybody knows the money in resort tax stays in resort tax, you can't take it out of there, and it's for the specific purposes, we track it by the different categories, so it's broken out to where. They can see how much Parks has, how much Public Works has, how much property tax really, trails and whatever, housing. So it's, I think it's just communication.
well, but like if I allocated 80,000 for parks and they spent 40. Does that 40 roll over and still parks next year?
Yep. Yeah, cause we, like, it is because of our vote and the way it is, 10%, let's say 10% goes to parks. We collect that this year, that 10% has to be spent on parks in the future, whether it's this year, next year, or following years, that 10% will always be part of the parks budget. Theirs is more like, how do we, what project, for us, our community, it's more about what projects are we doing in our parks and our streets. But they know that this money is dedicated for streets, for parks, we don't, so the one area that will be interesting is our community housing. Because that is where we have more flexibility about how we utilize it and who utilizes it. And so we need to look at kind of a grant process, we just granted $250,000 to Habitat for Humanity. To purchase the land in Whitefish and build 2 townhomes. And so I could see us needing to work with our community foundation or whoever, but to come up with what the grant application looks like, what are the factors that we consider, so. I don't know if you guys have stuff to share on like your grant application processes or those type of things, but. That's where I can see the use it or lose it, it's more on the grantee side of like. The way we've done our grants with property tax money that we collect. Is that, it's a reimbursement grant, we wanna see what they're spending the money on, so they tell us, here's the invoice that we've paid or we're going to pay. And then we give them the money instead of just giving them all the money up front. Because of concerns of the public on transparency and accountability, so that's kind of how we see our process, right? If we see somebody saying like, oh man, we better spend this money, or we're not gonna get it because of our grant period is from these states.
We do allocate our funds into specific impact areas, and if it's not all spent from the grant request, that fund continues to have that allocation in it, and it just rolls over.
Yeah, so that kind of makes me, I'm revisiting the cash reserves, I need a pie chart there, how much of that cash reserves is rollover and already allocated, they just haven't used it yet? Versus how much of it is emergency fund stuff, so.
I don't know that percentage on our end. We have 2.5 million in our reserves just strictly dedicated to like a natural disaster, act of God type of a scenario. Arguably, that's probably not enough in the event of a major disaster. We're targeting a yearly annual operation for BizRad, just to make sure that we're able to keep the lights on, and then we're allocating into a capital reserve that then gets tapped in a grant cycle every year. And we're toying around with the idea of only opening up capital requests every other year. Just because it allows us to save a little bit more, and also there's always a project, always. It is suspicious that the majority of our nonprofit grantees spend all of their money in Q4 though, to answer the question.
Well, and part of this ties down to the transparency and how do we communicate to the public. Like I said, it's even as I've listened to this, I've got this pie chart in my mind now. Here's what our cash reserves are. By the way, that's not just a pile of money. Some of it's allocated here, some of it's allocated here, some of it's allocated here. Rainy day fund, fiery day fund, floody day fund.
I think for us, it's always been a balance of the perception of having all the money in the world, and it's all already spoken for, much of it, and that's a hard thing to communicate to the general public. What other hot topics do people want to touch on? spurring some ideas like compliance, always some stuff around compliance that everyone deals with.
Lainey, I think you brought up before how, when you have adjacent communities, where do you collect the tax? Who collects the tax? Is it where you're?
Oh, yeah, well, we touched on that a little bit earlier and or these guys did in their opening where we did all sit down at the table and talk about what were the crossover businesses. I think there's very few of them, but we were meeting up with some unhappy vendors, let's put it that way, because and I think that some of it felt to me a little bit like they just had like some allegiance to who they had already been paying, and so they didn't want to have to like change that. I think that was like the sentiment that I was getting from the business owner, but I also I think that they were also unhappy about then having to now track which sales were in which place, and so they were like bummed out about that, and while it's probably not huge lift for them, you know what I mean, I thought it was clear that, the vendors were unhappy about having to do that, and so and the good portion of that conversation was them getting to see how we like what is entailed in our collections versus what you guys as a district or an area have in place or not yet. And then working together to at least make it so that we didn't have to like redo our resort tax ordinance in order to make it so that it would work with what they were going to and so sitting down in a room and making sure that we considered those kinds of things really made that so that it was beneficial for everyone and not a scary huge change for our our side of the equation because ours is already established. And then Dana came up with this awesome flow chart, which he has said has come kind of full circle from you guys, something that you guys use in Big Sky, but really making it so that the public or the vendors that are in the position of having to straddle the line has a mechanism to consult and say, well, if this, then that, and if this, then that, and making it so that it was easy for the new like vendors who might be straddling their services between the two jurisdictions would have a way to figure out which sales went to which district, and I guess we'll see how that goes. But then the one other component of that, we talked about this last night, I think, in one of our meetings or one of our conversations at the reception, and it's all on the honor system. You know what I mean? We really are relying on the vendors to say either this is how much business I've had, or this is where I've had this business as well. And so, on some level.
Who does what in the way of audits cause ours is built into it to do some audits, but we really haven't done them for a few years.
I'd recommend getting them done. It is the only hammer you have. And even if it's, what is that terrible saying, you chop off their heads to like, for the example to all the others, it's kind of like
Which
that.
town are you in?
Or something, but anyway, I think that if there is this potential that you might be audited, and as funny as people don't mind being audited, I'm like all about that. Because I always learn something, right? But anytime you say the word audit, all of the vendors like freeze up and they're afraid to be audited. But I think that unless they know that someone is getting audited or there's a potential to be audited, then the honor system works a little better.
So if we have an external auditor do 12, they select 12 businesses annually at random, and then we actually amended our code to allow us to do audits internally as well, so. I work for an audit firm, I'm a CPA, and I did resort tax audits actually for the state of Whitefish, so I'm like, we can do this internally. But I wanted that flexibility because, you know, you're stuck with 12 randoms, well then what happens when you know that you have somebody who's not reporting and you have a feeling that they're, like, you have some proof that they've reported wrong based on their history. We did allow for us to do that in our ordinance, which is great, and we've utilized it a couple times. I will say the audits are helpful. When we went from 2 to 3%, we had pulled a coffee shop for the auditors that we did. And next thing I know, I got an email that says, hey, I didn't agree with the 1% and I haven't been collecting it. What can we do to make this right? And I was like, oh, perfect. So didn't go through the audit process, but instead I was able to work with them to collect back taxes that we wouldn't have known about. Quite honestly, it's 1% different. Without that audit having occurred. And so I was able to take it all the way back to when 1% went into effect because she basically said, I just didn't agree with it. That's
Do
cool.
we have names of outside audit firms that are doing that, third party?
Nexus CPA Group, which was formerly Denny Downing Associates in Kalispell. Now it's Nexus CPA Group. They do ours. They also do our regular audits. I think any firm that's doing your regular audit is probably capable of doing it because it's actually not an audit, it's actually an attestation service because it's specific questions that you're answering at some record. So it doesn't take very long. I mean, I think what my retirement gig could be doing resort tax audits. But yeah.
We use Dellinger and Gallagher. They're out of Manhattan. And also I just completed my 4th cycle of resort tax audits. We also do 12 at the end of the day. We do 10 resort tax and then we choose 2 for TBID, which is the tourism business district. And so I have not had an audit yet where, well, at least one has been over $10,000 that they owed us back.
Oh, wow.
And then that triggers, you can do backyard audits according to our ordinance. So, it has more than paid for itself. Bob and Mike are great. They come in with their little printers and laptops and set up shop for 2 days, 3 days, and we hammer them out. It's not easy. I do think it's, for us, very important to keep that external. I don't need to go through tax returns and your point of sale system or anything like that. We're a very small community. I don't need that. So for us, it's been more than beneficial. Highly recommend doing that because it's been very eye-opening. And we look back on like who's been selected in the last so many years, and so we make sure those are chosen. But then we'll kind of have like a list of 20 to 30 that are like, hey, create some ones that might be problem children, but we put them in like a Google selector system, so we're still not selecting. Our auditor doesn't have a business list. We just say, here's the names, here you go. This is who you're gonna be contacting, which we do help, like sending out letters. If someone wants to drop off their information with us, we're happy to put that in our little cabinet for them, but we don't touch it, we don't go through it. And they're required to have it all done, paid for. I have one, will not get a business license renewed here next month because they haven't paid $9,800 to us, so they have to pay that up before they can have a business license for the next year. And if they don't, we can find them daily for not having a business license and doing business in West Williston.
It's great for the vendors as well, though, because it's a huge learning lesson. Because there are a lot who have overpaid, they pay tax on tax. What else do we pay? We have a lot.
Just or the like
One
they're
that's
not
not
familiar with the
taxing.
exemption list. Yeah, the educational
Not
piece.
taxing things.
We have that problem with the dollar stores, because they're all set in corporate, so somebody, hey, I bought soda down at the grocery store and. They didn't charge me tax, and then here all the dollars seem to be a problem.
We've had to work with like Walgreens, some of the bigger grocery stores. We've had to work overtime, and it's funny you think that you got everybody on track, and next thing you know, you're like, what?
No.
Nope, you got those lists again. I don't know what you're doing, but they have such long like lists in those systems that it's like you just gotta go find a couple, and you're like, okay, so probably every chip is not taxable, but it should be like, like those kind of things. It's one of the things we also do with our audits is with our auditors, if they have a bad audit, or they flat out like refuse to provide audit stuff, we audit them the next year too, because we want to make sure if they've done wrong, we'll audit them again. The big ones, I would say. Some of them are simple learning lessons, but we've had some where they just flat out have their sales on a state pat, and like we couldn't determine it. Well, we're gonna try to determine it and try to educate them how they should be at least tracking sales for us. But yeah, it's definitely a deterrent for not reporting. And just like that one example where I had, as soon as she knew she was gonna have an audit, she's like, oh, this isn't good. I already know I did wrong. And so brings people forward too. And that way I want to get compliant before the auditor shows up.
And the education piece is huge. I mean, I really do feel like, people are doing their little business and then all of a sudden, like, when they're learning is through the audit. And I know that Bob had always suggested to me that he would be willing to come, like if your auditor is willing to come to your community and then like be there and provide information for your businesses. So that they had an opportunity, a crack at education before getting audited, like.
It has brought up a lot of great things for us as a town, and like discussion of our resort tax, because we're just so wide open of like luxury items. Well, that changes. People view that differently. So it's kind of helped us clear up some of those gray areas of like, and cleaning fees on Airbnbs, that's a big one. And we always find someone that's either underpaid or overpaid. So I won't say it's not always a negative for people, but sometimes they're getting some money back.
Yeah. Usually there's some of each, yeah.
Well, that was one of the things that came up as we're going into this process, like the, little convenience stores that are selling pop, grocery, and whatnot. And so, we kind of go by the SNAP example, and so, the way the rules were written, that, basically pop is in a sand candy or essentials of life now. Well, I just see last night that the paper came through that is no longer the case. That pop and candy are no longer part of the staff in Montana.
Really?
Yeah, really. So,
We've always taxed pop and candy. We've always taxed it.
Ours is a really weird because they changed it to, they were trying to get milk or something, but rather than saying milk, they went to more than a half a gallon. Well, guess what? A 2-liter bottle of soda pop's more than a half a gallon. So that seems to be one of them that's continually, we need to revisit the list. So
Speaking of audits, I know you're talking about auditing collectors, do you audit any grant recipients? Anyone? Or what do
We
you
have the authority to audit all of our grants, so like the habitat, this is the first time we've used resort tax for a grant. In there, like I do with all of our other grants that we give to, say, like Project Whitefish Kids, who maintains a youth sports complex. It's technically city land, but it's not profit run, but we put in the language there that we can audit their records at any time related to the funding we've given them. So we do limit it to just the money we've given them, but we have that authority at any time to ask for the documentation, and it doesn't state that it has to be an external auditor. It can be city staff that looks at it too, just because of that concern that the money, they came in and they said, we need the money for this purpose, but yet next thing you know, they're all going to Cabo or something. Like, we want to make sure the money's being spent, as I heard of Cabo, so if we can figure out how to have resort tax pay for that, that'd be great. But no, that is a concern of our community, just making sure that the money's being spent appropriately. We have authority to, haven't done it.
Just to touch on our compliance audits, our policy is to do 20 per year. We've struggled with that since our former auditor stepped away from doing compliance audits, and we have a new auditor, and I think we're getting back on track. So we did about 10 last year, and so some are based on risk, You know, how much they're collecting, if it's more, they're more likely to be audited, a few random. And then, some, if we have a lead, if we have an inkling that something is not right with their collections, then we'll flag them for an audit as well. And yeah, we've had the whole gamut of, you know, most of them go pretty well. There was a bar or restaurant a few years back that was not taxing alcohol. And it ended up being over $100,000 going back, you know, 5+ years, that they eventually did pay. But, they got audited again last year, I think, and they're very much concerned with being on the right track, because they don't want that to happen. But, and then talking about auditing grant recipients, we are in the process of doing our first 2 audits for grant recipients right now, with a third-party auditor, because of some issues we had with the reimbursements coming in and just not, being adequate documentation and, invoices that came in multiple times, and, trying to figure out how to track that, make sure the funds are being spent properly.
Yeah, it wasn't our, we've all, same as you, we've always had the authority to audit our grants, we've just never done it. Unfortunately, the reality we're facing is due to a mistake. So we gotta get through these audits, and then we're gonna hopefully get on a system of 2 to 3 projects a year, just to make sure. Did you use the money how you said? It's all budget, so you know, everything is kind of an assumption, but we've just had enough strange things come in that it's finally time. And some of our, you know, some of these grants are $1 million, like it's a significant amount of money. It is very helpful reimbursing, so I have eyes on everything that's coming in. So I, you know, it's not people going to Cabo or, you know, they like to catch that stuff. But there's still, it still slips through the cracks, and even in our case, it's 20 to 40 projects a year that I'm looking at receipts for, so it's just a lot to manage.
Yeah, you can help me out if this is ethical. We haven't done an audit yet, right? We're just trying to get it in right now. In the event that you would do an audit on a management company that has properties in both tax areas, it would be interested to join you on that.
Yeah, so we usually actually audit just I don't think it's property manager, it's the actual short-term rental. So if we might have like a Whitefish property management, it's gonna be a specific short-term rental within that property manage.
Okay.
Property managers, yeah, responsibility, so we are specific, and so they're gonna just be considering it.
If that
But-
changes.
Yeah, we'll let you know if it changes, yeah, the partner.
Do you mentioned randomizing in a list, do you get to specify digit business X or business Y, or is that, did the rules about how that comes preclude that from happening? You just put them all in a bingo bucket and pull out 5 names, or can I say, yeah, the bar down on the corner is a concern?
Running list of like, I don't know, it's probably been 7 years ago that Peggy printed it of our businesses, and then she just adds and crosses off this like working list. And then we highlight as they're audited, so there's a lot of orange all over that paper of like what we've, but within like the rest, we kind of just randomly select. Now, obviously you kind of know pretty fast if they've been paying on time, if they're really on top of their stuff, like kind of how their audit's gonna come through, it's probably gonna be fine, we're probably gonna have a little credit with them, whatever. You know your problem people right away.
Can you do that, or is that retaliatory and capricious, or I just remember jokes from the 70s, oh, here you go, tax audit coming for you, you know?
No, I've just been really lucky, I guess, to tend to, well, we put in about 20 to 30, I guess, in like a Google selector, and I let Peggy sit there and spin the wheel. But I've been just really lucky so far with my employment with the town that I get some doozies. I'm hoping, I really thought last year, I was like, if this happens to me again, it might kill me. So we're hoping for a better year 5, cause it's not fun, those people can get real upset. And they blame us, and I'm like, I didn't audit you. You need to talk to our auditor, but then you're also trying to have that relationship with your auditor as well. Of like, please keep coming back and renewing your contract with us. quickly nail that, but like people get really,
I did not at you, but I did pick your list and put it in the bucket of them for them to draw out of, cause to me, I'm gonna go to Danae and say, Danae. Give me 25 names and then we'll have the auditor pick 5 or 10, is that kind of how your approach works?
yeah, so we just have our business license list, and yeah, I choose. However I choose, and then we put it in Google Slack there, just let it go.
We also tell our vendors, like, you have been chosen in a random selection. We do 12, and we have like 4 categories of businesses, you got bars and restaurants, lodging, dispensaries, retail.
So make sure you get some of all of them.
Yeah, we get 3 of each. And then what we often, with the ones that we audit again, the auditor usually puts in their recommendation to audit that business the next year. So that's helpful because it's not just coming from the city either, it's, that they're gonna be recommended to be audited the next
And
year.
if you found something in the audit that you're educating, you wanna make sure that they got it right the next year, now that they understand what they're doing.
It really is an educational opportunity. I truly believe that.
So while we're on education, let's move to tuition. What are the costs for like people who are late on their resort tax? Cause our 30-day late is $250, and then at 60, it's another 500, so you're looking at $750. And then the appeals process, they just changed it because the appeals process was to come to council. Have council have 2 or 3 special meetings a month for doing nothing but listening to resort tax. Where people show up and they're
We're gonna do it.
pleading their case on video while they're on their bike, exercise bike. That one did not go well. It's been wildly entertaining, but they changed it to give staff basically what it is. If it's a first time and it's an educational thing, I can waive it. And there's still an appeals process that goes to council, but we were getting. Council was, and then the other thing we did is we just send out a notice. Remember, it's due. We send out to everybody. By the way, if you've already paid, thank you. But that actually dropped down on the people who missed it, like you said, in education, and it's not a malicious thing. It's just people miss it. But
So what do you do after 60 days?
there's a percentage of it as well that was set in, but yeah, you could collect $23 in resort tax and have a $750 fine if you didn't file. So
How long has that been the case?
years,
Okay.
like probably 10.
Wow.
Whether it was necessarily being enforced or followed up on, I don't know. But like I said, where it really came into us was we were getting every quarter half a dozen appeals or a dozen appeals coming in. And it helps to have your council establish a record. It's like there's got to be a darn good reason. And didn't we have the same conversation 3 months ago? You know, so
So is it quarterly? Maybe quarterly.
yeah. So I'm just curious if anybody, based on the looks, nobody else has massive fines other than interest because the large businesses were like, I'm just not gonna, you know, that's a cheap loan.
Yeah, that's what we're running into with West right now, big time. Is our late fees, if it's over $1,500 of gross sales, then it's $50 for the first month late. And then after that, it's 3% of their, what they ever actually do, per month. So I have one of my main restaurants in town, hasn't paid us since August. It skews our numbers, right? If we're looking at resort tax collections month after month. And I'm like, well, I can't say who this name is, but I know one of our big people haven't paid us this month, last month. And so it's really hard. We have a committee, like our map board, and like giving them cash and stuff. I'm like, yeah, it's been tight this year so far, but once again, we have our business licensing, so we have that threshold, or like you have to be current with your resort tax before we'll renew your business license. So I know they'll have to pay, so I'm like, your cash is coming. It's coming because they're gonna have to pay this, or they're gonna be paying all these fines for having business, without a business license, so. It is one thing that I'm looking at talking to our council soon about raising these fees, because you're right, they can keep it in their bank account and they don't care because it's such a low amount. It's just pennies to them at the end of the day.
Your comment was, well, it's MCA. But without, and I remember when cause they, once upon a time, it was like some 21, they were like borrowed stuff from a credit card company, pick your worst credit card company or something. And then they came back and I kind of thought that's right, cause somebody will come, we have temporary vendors that come to town. Hatchet throwing. We made $48. Thank you, we'll take your check for $7.50. This is easy.
That's a balance, I mean, I'm just gonna say, like, I've been at the town council meeting where the hairdresser sold $40 worth of product and the penalties were, as you mentioned, like just outrageous, like, and so, and then have the whole town show up and be upset for the business owner saying you can't charge that hundreds of dollars worth of penalties and fines for, the $3.50 that they owe in resort tax. And so there is a bit of a, like, it's nothing for a hotel or a restaurant. And it's just outrageous for a smaller vendor. And so I think that there's, if there could be some balance, like some sort of percentage that's involved, then it's based on the resort tax that you're not paying or that you haven't.
And by the way, I was gonna say, if you want Red Lodge, I think it's in a little bit weird spot, but if you go out to the Resort Tax Association, so it's not under resort, or not under resources, but if you go to the resort tax cities and then you go click on them, everybody's, and we need to update ours, but you can go see like what our ordinances and resolutions are and what everybody else's are. Hopefully everybody's keeping those updated.
I mean, we can actually go through the court process and it can be a criminal penalty if they don't report, so.
Yeah.
I used that when I was the auditor, and they wouldn't provide me the stuff, I just quote you can be charged with a misdemeanor and up to 6 months in jail. And as an auditor, because I wasn't the city at the time, I got the documents I needed really quickly, actually. So, and we never used that, but we have used the municipal infractions and gone through the civil court process for some of our businesses in the past.
Yeah, I mean, that's all that, all that stuff is in MCA, but the reality is. On that criminal side, then you gotta get your county attorney on board to prosecute that.
Yeah, we have municipal court, but what we do like I said, our municipal court, we go the civil side, and that's been successful, could it be a municipal infraction because we're a city. But we increased our late fees and I think it helps. We only had 10% per annum, and it was like per annum, it was like super low. Yeah, and so when we went to we give them a 30-day grace period after the due date. Yeah. And then they get a $50, and then it's $100 per month after that. And so we've had some businesses come into compliance and they've had to ask for forgiveness, where I'm like, okay, you have a $50 tax bill and you have $2,000 worth of late fees. We'll cut it in half. And if you are delinquent again, those will become owed. And so it kind of keeps them in like, okay, now we gotta be on top of it because we'll come back. We basically say like, yes, we'll waive part of it, but you're gonna have to owe that back if you don't keep consistent. Because we wanna use it as like an education tool also, because some of these businesses, they don't think it's as important as the other work they have to do with their business. We wanna prove that it's just as important. And so here's what you get if you don't do it, but we also understand that you're a new business owner or you just took over for somebody. You didn't think about resort tax, that's fine. It's not common in other communities and like our valuable Pumpkin Falls, but was that we were the only ones up here for a while. And so we had some leniency, but I think it's helped for bringing people into compliance.
Our current one is out. I just went and looked at it. It is the current, so 19% plus the $50, but at 30 days, $250, and at 60 days, $500. So anybody who wants to go out borrow it, you're welcome to steal, beg, borrow, whatever.
Our late fees are pretty low, $30 first month, $60 second month, and so on, and then it's 1% interest, so 12% per annum, and we give the maximum 5% admin fee back. I don't know what everyone else gives, but we're right now we have a 5-day grace period. So our larger businesses that pay monthly, they, as long as they pay by the 5th of the month after the due date, they're still getting the admin fee. They're not getting the late fee and are not getting interest. So some of our larger businesses have started paying after the due date and they still get paid the admin fee, and they don't even care about the late fee because it's $30, like you said. So right now we're in the process of removing the grace period and then changing the late fee, so they get hit with that the day after the due date, and they won't get the admin fee if they pay late anymore.
Which that's for some businesses.
That's 5%, so yeah.
Six figures, yeah, so.
Well, and then it's commensurate. I think what's handy about utilizing that particular method is that it's commensurate with the amount of business that they're, and it's their paycheck, all of a sudden. They're messing with their own paycheck.
Yes.
And they have control over that.
So I'm curious, show of hands, how many collect it monthly? How many do it quarterly? Are we like the odd ducks? Wow.
We have both. It's based on how much they're collecting. If they're smaller, they can pay quarterly. If they're above 5,000 annually, then it's monthly.
We technically have something like that, but it's like they have to collect less than $5 or something per month. But there is like,
Oh,
we have
yeah.
really
Super small.
super small exception to the monthly payment. It's $5. If you pay less than $5 a month, then the city manager may extend the time for making returns and paying tax due. So, it could be whatever period I guess the city manager wants, but
I feel like we struggle with, but if they're quarterly, they forget about it. It's like if they're not doing it every month, they get behind more frequently, it feels like.
Yeah.
But
Jada, don't we, even if they don't have sales, they have to submit.
they do have to submit because they don't have
Those.
and they don't, and I don't think we've had any, like, make a request to go to like a longer term submittal and payment plan.
Wanted to, but I don't think he ever.
Yeah, he never came to me, so, those ones, the short term rentals, I think what we've done though is we've shut them, like, we've actually noted that they're closed
We
for the
know that they're
season,
only
and they don't
operate,
have.
like, we have a couple of businesses that only operate in winter, only operate in summer, whatever, so we have the ability to. Mark those months they're closed out, so it doesn't show in our delinquent reports. As like a non-reportable month, so I try to do that for a lot of people, or if they know. I have a gal, kind of does some mobile stuff and she's. Paid for my business license and can you refund it? I never have any sales in Whitefish and I'm like, just report zeros for the entire year, keep your license. And if you do something here, report it, I'll just do that for you. And then I don't have, you didn't waste your money, basically, so.
that's where the honor system comes in again, is because like if they're telling you, I only operate these months, and then a surprise, they showed up in July, and they didn't plan on it, then you have to turn that tax form back on or whatever it is, so it's kind of
That's
balanced.
tricky, but especially with our like special event vendors,
Yes.
because they're.
Some people care about that, some people don't, but we do have the form, created in such a way that if you put in the date and your sales, then it kind of auto populates. You know, so if you're late, it'll tell you how much you're paying in penalties. So that's helpful, then they can like see the bad news.
Yeah, we used to only accept checks, people mail in their payments and then they might be late, but they didn't add the late fee on there, so, well. Now I gotta go track them down for the late fee, and it's,
Mhm.
now that it's all online, you know, it's automatic. And they pay it or don't pay it all.
Have you audited Big Sky?
Oh, yes.
Several times. They're usually great.
I think our matrix on it's all randomized, but we do, I think we have a higher level of frequency on the big dogs. I think we do.
Every 3 years,
Yeah.
yeah, there's large ones.
When you've done Big Sky, have you ever done a unit within Big Sky? In other words, I'm just gonna do ticket sales, or I'm just gonna do ski school.
We do it all. They don't remit with that level of specificity. It's all gross sales. Although it would be helpful from a just reporting standpoint to understand the economics of what's going on.
Yeah.
Lodging versus pass sales versus.
Do you get a breakout, excuse me, of lodging versus retail versus other, it's all one month?
We would like to have.
We'd like
We
to-
get a breakdown.
Yeah, we'd like to move that direction, so we have that data to share, because people ask for that a lot.
Yeah, we were trying to get a little data rich, right? Because we're like, nothing. So that's why we went monthly instead of quarterly. For that reason, just to see the ebb and flow of what can take place. We went, in collections, we wanted to open the door on a lot of different things. I thought that the pay.gov was gonna be, the way that a lot of people would pay, and it's a trickle charger for us. But it's just, what's convenient. I remember we had this discussion. Sometimes you have these discussions on the board, they just drive me crazy. And it was the fact that we shouldn't accept checks. And I'm like, help me out here. Well, people shouldn't be writing checks. And I'm like, I don't give a shit if they write a check or not. If somebody wants to write a check, write a check. So let's not inhibit, let's help attract and collect. So that we're not to the audit spot yet. So it's great information that we're hearing. And I thank you all for that.
Are you doing the EFTs also on your J.gov?
Yeah.
That's how most of ours are doing.
Yeah. So don't hit me, Ron, when I bring this one up. So, because he doesn't know I'm gonna talk about it. So I just change subject here for a second. We're getting ready to have our first grant review and output, right? And it's new to a lot of people on the mountain, a lot of the organizations. Has anybody ever done a situation where you have one that instead of just 1 year, it's twice during the year? I know that sounds like a huge deal for Big Sky, but if you had $1 million and it was the first time you were gonna give out grant money, you start taking in applications in, July, August, and you do a first round payout, and then you say, okay, in January, we're gonna do the same thing again. We're gonna save some of our money because I think we're gonna get some momentum going, and I think there's gonna be like, oh, geez, there is funds available, and what gee whiz, they did do it. I'd just be interested in people's thoughts. Take out the idea that, oh God, I gotta go through this. But would it be beneficial to those who are receiving grants if they had an opportunity to have that the first year out?
We did it during in 2020.
Okay.
When COVID hit and we said, oh gosh, what's gonna happen? We weren't sure if the faucet was gonna shut off or not. It cranked up in Big Sky, but. And then all of the local foundations, they do it twice a year. My gut says in Big Sky, the recipients don't like it. Just because grant funding's so volatile and to not know beyond 6 months. That was kind of the complaint that I would see us getting is, oh, you're only gonna give us 6 months of funding. What happens if you don't give us 7 months?
Yeah, so I was
You know?
thinking a little bit of a different spin than that too, Jenny. I was thinking, we're gonna give you for the year,
Yeah,
but we're gonna have a second round. So we're gonna save $500,000
yeah,
and we're only gonna give $500,000 out the first go round. We're gonna give another $500,000 out in the second go round. But we're gonna fund you, if you're in the first go round, we're gonna fund you for your entire project. But, well, let's step back for a minute and say, you know, and we're in the same boat, right? We happen to deal with ski areas. I just didn't know if it had ever been done, if it would be beneficial to those organizations we're trying to serve.
I don't know how that fits into the municipal budget process where you have to have your budget done at the second Tuesday after the first full moon after a hen flies west. That's like August, that's your whole year's of budget. So how do you put a big chunk of money aside in your budget that doesn't have a name to it? That's part of that responsibility of that budget is to allocate it.
I do it all the time.
I don't have a mayor.
Yeah, they're different, they're in a city, but I do that.
I can take money and put it right in this column.
Oh, no, and I know as long as your bottom line matches that you can do some stuff, but that just seems like a really big.
Same question, because I've had the same thoughts, because with our housing dollars. If you look at what we've done with property taxes, not with resort tax, and so we budget the full amount. We budget like, we're gonna give council the full authority, but they still have the authority to decide what projects are done. So I gotta go and say, Andy, you got $500,000 this year. We'll come to you, you can decide if you wanna give them money or not. And so we've done it that way, we just budget the full amount. But we've been talking about like with the housing committee, kind of how does the grant process work for developers or even programs? And, you know, I think a lot lean for that once a year, because you got your full pool and you can then rank them all based on that total dollar amount. But I also know that our nonprofits are coming throughout the year. And is it gonna be a change for them and can they adapt to pre-planning? Or are there gonna be some organizations that are more prepared, more established, that are gonna win because they have pre-planned, they know how to do what they're doing in that field, they already know. Whereas you have some maybe newer nonprofits that maybe aren't that organized and then they see the opportunity, but they aren't quite ready, but like 6 months from then they're ready. So I have the same question for you too, as you actually, is like, how frequent should you open a grant cycle for using resort tax dollars? So I not that I have an answer.
So anything?
Jay, I would suggest you talk to the community foundation because they fund more nonprofits than anybody and they've been doing it for a long time. And they have a whole process by which that happens. They generally grant it once a year, right, Doug?
Yeah.
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 Yeah,
I'm guessing there's a reason they do it once a year.
Yeah, we've been very close in contact with them, right? I'm doing it more for the organizations than for us. I mean, I don't know how many organizations are gonna come to us here in September. It could be 4, it could be 20. I don't know. I have the faintest idea. I'm just trying to see if there's a reason to get some rhythm going. And in regards to the budget, if we're gonna give $500,000 out in grants, $500,000 goes on the budget. Didn't tell me when I have to spend it.
Right, but you generally put in what it's for. I'll be honest too, this whole conversation about grants is, and I get that that's just a term and a mechanism, but ours, I don't think, nothing in ours is a grant. You come to me with a budget request and I put it into the budget.
Yeah, the cities are different than the districts for sure.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is the
I think
districts,
what it
that's
is.
your, and
Our
our,
grants are your budget,
yeah.
for lack of a better.
yeah.
I'm just using the word grant because it seems to flow in this group.
Jay, I think there's I do think, I remember the year we did it during COVID and we consistently try to adapt our process based on what we learned from the previous year. It's very simple.
Yeah.
And you get one swing at it every year. there was an advantage to having two swings added in that year because we were able to pick up on two different cycles and say, okay, we learned from this. And I think there could be an awareness building maybe that would happen if you were to open it up twice, just to generate more interest in the grant making process. And you'd learn from two experiences. It's gonna be twice the amount of work though.
Sure. Yeah.
So is the juice worth the squeeze? I don't know.
I don't know.
Great conversation. What other hot topics do people have?
Does anybody else do resort tax bonds? So when you have a business register, do they put money up front to?
Red Lodge does 500, then after the first year of being all on time, you get it back.
For a new business, is that what you do it for?
Yeah.
Okay.
For a new business, first time somebody shows up.
Okay, so let's say they've been non-compliant 70% of the time, they're not paying. So you just keep holding that bond until then?
Yeah, that they don't get their bond back until they go a year in compliance. And there's 2 or 3 different ways that they can do a cash bond, they can actually do a bond, buy a bond. There's all sorts of different ways they can meet that assurances thing. And that's our biggest thing for we had a food truck pulled in town last week, just showed up. He broke 2 or 3 things. He was trespassing and everything else too. Just showed up in town and started flinging, I'd say tacos, but it was Chinese food. Did a great business. The guy across the street was not happy at all because it's like, anybody can just show up and steal our business for the day. So we're having to adapt and change that protocol a little bit there. What we'll go move to is citing them. And then if they go get taken care of, it'll be waived. But yeah, that was a learning experience.
That's taking this long.
Would you mind describing?
This is the first one they gave to me. We have this weird problem in Red Lodge right now where we're pushing things up the org chart rather than down the org chart. So we can go get them fixed.
I was just gonna suggest that you describe the bond situation with special events or
Yeah. Yeah, so I'll start with the new business, we have a 500 as well. What drives me nuts is I have business that started 5 years ago, they've never been compliant, so I continuously have to keep rolling this bond over and they're not adequately compliant, so what are we doing here? But with our special events, we have a $1,500 bond. So they come to the town and they get a special event permit. And they have to either pay that $1,500 for their bond, or they have to get that waived through the town council. But then their vendors, since they usually bring in outside businesses to work their event and, sell more t-shirts or whatever. Then they have to collect that resort tax, and we're just making sure that money holds for them to be able to collect that resort tax, remit it to the town. And then if they are not in compliance with that, then obviously we hold their bond, but then they cannot have another event in the town until they are correct. So we have the 2 different mechanisms there.
Someone could figure out the event stuff, that would be awesome.
What was that?
If someone could figure out the event stuff, that would be awesome.
Yeah, it's become a really big topic for us too. It's like, do I start working Saturdays and I'm going around and checking on? Because they might report 3, but I went to the event as a community member and I see 18 there. But I don't have record of who was there or whatnot, so it's something that's definitely, I've lost a couple nights of sleep over, but also have to let go of.
That goes back to kind of our adjustment we need to do here. So on our land use process, one of the things we have is this going to require a business license? Is this going to require a resort tax bond? And I think we're going to go to the future that if they're there, law enforcement shows up and cite them. And then they can come fix it and get caught up. Let's say we might have Danae jump in. If I had a time machine, Danae, who handles all of our resort tax. I was like, can you come jump in? And she was at lunch, of course, so catch the last few minutes, but and then we go put them on the calendar, so I know who's there and who's not. And then they could go by and cite them for that to motivate them to come in and get taken care of. that wasn't an event, but it's the same sort of thing.
What else is on people's minds? Solve all the world's problems.
So I don't have like a hot topic. I got like a cool topic.
Let's go.
So, well, I know we talked about this, but this is the 40th year of resort tax collection in West Yellowstone. So, former mayor of West Yellowstone, Ken Davis, put together like a little history report so that if anybody's interested in looking at this copy, or if you'd like to, I can email a copy, but it kind of just talks about just the establishment of the resort tax in West Yellowstone, and then there's some pictures of turning dirt into asphalt and all the cool things that happened in the 80s in West. So I mean, this was like probably the original rally call.
Yeah.
In West Yellowstone, and then obviously as people saw the results, I mean, the renewal gets easier and easier. But if anybody's interested in that, it's pretty cool little document. So
You don't mind passing it around?
yeah,
Could we post it onto the website in their city along with all of their documents, get them the electronic copy?
You can get Daryl a copy of that too. That's OG right there.
well, that's pretty neat. I think we're gonna try to do something, but I don't know if that's in the cards or not this year. So.
I mean, it shows a really good perspective of what West Yellowstone was before resort tax and what it is now.
Yeah.
They have pavement now.
I mean, prior to that, there was only one street in town you could ride a bicycle down without killing yourself. And that was the one that was halfway on the national forest. You know, how proper. No, I was.
What else is going on in your respective communities? Does anyone ever run into point of sale issues where someone is like, I can't get my point of sale to plug the resort tax in?
Yeah.
We do.
Weekly.
Is there any point of sale that you reference people to? I mean, a lot of them do it, it just seems lazy.
A lot of them seem to say Montana doesn't have a sales tax, so we can't add a tax. But we do.
Well, that's what you hear from the Airbnb people too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, well. Yeah, and it's on your, not you, certainly the state. Yeah, this is great. Yeah, it's quite a process.
What about farmers markets? Do they mark everything up or they just do sales and then do that algebra from 7th grade where you back calculate it?
I think it's a mix, and some of them build it in, but they don't really have a sophisticated system for doing that, so then they kind of end up paying in a pocket. You know, they don't all have the credit card machines.
Talk short-term rentals real quick. Two things. First, property taxes that are changing this year for short-term rentals is gonna be very interesting. I think we can have two outcomes, right? You have reduced number of short-term rentals, so resort tax goes down, or they raise the price of the short-term rentals, so resort tax goes up. I mean, I think it's gonna be very interesting to see how short-term rentals are affected for all of our communities. With this new tax bill this year and into the future. But kind of what I wanted to touch on a little more is. Big Sky, you guys signed an agreement with Airbnb
And VRBO.
and VRBO. How do you audit to make sure they are collecting? Is Airbnb and VRBO giving you lists of all the individual short-term rentals? Or are you just taking it by their word? And so how do you audit short-term rentals if you're using them as?
That's great.
We do have in the collection agreements, there are methods that we can audit them. It's a little different than our typical audits would be. Our auditor has audited both of them in the last year, and I haven't seen finished product yet, but we definitely don't get a list of all the properties, and sometimes property owners call us and say, how much did I pay? Like, I don't know, I get one lump sum every month and that's it. So it's, how do you know who paid them? No, yeah, it was just kind of a, this is the best case scenario, we're gonna get probably, you know, the majority of what we should be collecting, rather than trying to have to go track down with individual owners, so.
So there's like no one that you have like, there's no one that you can, no short-term rental that you can point to and say you haven't reported since you started renting your house or anything like that? You have like no data.
We do that, but we have the short-term rental programs, a lot of them go out and do the screen scrapes. And they'll come back and give you a list of, we paid, I wanna say $13,000 for that, but we made an extra 60. As soon, so it was something that absolutely paid for itself. And we've recently switched, we switched companies because the one company was no longer keeping up with the tech, you know, it's one of those chicken eggs where we can make it so you can't see us and then they do a better job.
The
going out.
websites, yeah.
Yeah, and so we've switched to another one, and one of the things that did offer, by the way, is they can collect the resort tax and pay it online. Too, if Danae were here, she can tell you what we switched from and to, but I think it's a fairly, I got the idea it's a fairly wide level switch. That happened within the state.
It's a rental scapes.
But that goes out and they'll give you a list. Before we had that, I found out that the real estate management companies were really good at that too. They could give you a list and tell you, here's everybody who's, because they were doing that same thing manually. But yeah, that application we're using to go out and do screen scrapes has paid for itself many times over.
No. We used the software to, it was called Lodging Rebs, GovOS, and now it's Numo, short-term rental software. But we do require individual owners still to register, and then they confirm with us that they're only booking through Airbnb and VRBO, and so then we know money's coming in. If they say no, then we give them tax forms so that they remit, like if they have their own website or something.
Okay, so you do have a general
Yeah.
list of
We do.
who
Yeah.
keeps the admin fee? Airbnb and VRBO?
Yeah, so they get paid to do it.
Twice probably.
Yeah, that's right. That's about that, but the owners don't have to do the work anymore.
We're using their DNA.
Okay.
Yeah, it shows there, I think it shows we got 160. And that tells what, you know, what they're renting for and the amount of money anticipated.
Do you pay for AirDNA? Do you pay for AirDNA? We used to use the free one just to find non-compliant.
Yeah.
We have rental scapes by Decker Technologies now, it's just a lot cheaper than GovOS, because I think they got, so we originally were with, I can't remember the name. They got that out, I think, by that company, and their price was, I was like, wow, no. Yeah, it's around that 12,000, like it's pretty reasonable cost for us with the rental scapes, but my biggest concern about, so like, I would love to go and do those type of agreements, but then I'm a little bit concerned that we lose that tracking and it might be more effective, but I don't know, I feel like, I don't know, because I've been on that edge, so I know you guys did it, the state did it, but then it's like, you get no data from them except for here's your money, great. And so, I struggle with that, for like property managers, you know, I think a lot gets rented through Airbnb and VRBO, but we do have property managers, so it might reduce some of the work, but I think if we were to look at our Decker or our rental scape, we would have to be really careful to say, like, how do we know they're only on Airbnb and VRBO? Or are they also by a property manager in it? That's why I haven't attempted to do that for the city, you know, just because I know that the data is limited.
I haven't seen it, because we have a large share of ours for property managers too. And we have a separate ordinance that was kind of a cap on vacation rentals. They have different categories there, but my experience or understanding is that everybody's on everything. Like even the property managers are on VRBO, Airbnb, and again, going back to the $13,000 software, that'll tell you when it shows up, and then they'll list how many weeks it's available versus when it's not available and all that sort of stuff.
They have close to 400, and
like me. Taking those payments, so it'd be really hard. There's no way I'd have enough time to figure out. Because we have Sabria that would feel, I mean, like, it's like, we have a short-term rental compliance person as well. And so it would definitely be, like, I see more challenges by adding that agreement than what we're doing. Like, effectively, I think we're being pretty effective with our short-term rental. We have a person who's finding the registered ones. And then we have our payment specialists and follow up on our payment compliance, but that is, yeah, I don't know. Anyways, I think it was already my experience with it. Do you guys think that it was a good investment or a good idea?
Mr. Chair, Richard's got his, I see Richard online. That's,
Yep.
so Rick,
Initially, we had a lot of problems with VRBOs, et cetera, not registering. And they had problems with their point of sale systems through their booking agencies. Most of those seem to have been straightened out for us. The ongoing perpetual problem we have is with people who are running guide businesses of some sort. Our district is very small in a geographical area, but a lot of business gets done in town. In my own business, a lot of my business is guide trips that are not performed in town, but the business is here, and so I pay the tax, collect the tax on all of it. But somebody lives a mile and a half out of town, they're not in the district, they pick up all their clients in town, they get mail here. There's all sorts of things that make me think that they are a business based in Gardner and should be collecting and remitting the tax. But we're going around and around with some people more particularly than others about these folks that are using our space but not acknowledging it, denying in fact that they are. Park across the street in Yellowstone Park to meet their clients, pick them up at motels and say, oh, they've already paid any tax they owe to Gardner when they registered at the motel, conveniently ignoring the fee that they were charging them for picking them up at the motel. And if anybody has suggestions on how to deal with that, we'd love to hear about it.
If the point of sale is in town or the pickup spot is in town, then they pay the resort tax.
That creates a nexus if there's pickup, drop off, any part of the trip that's within the district. That's what our policy.
Well, that's what we thought the legal situation was. But we're dealing with a relatively small number of people. The cost of getting our attorney to bring charges against somebody, it's like, we don't know how much it'd work, especially when they're also our neighbors in a lot of ways.
I think it's a prevalent issue still for us in Big Sky one way or another. I've often wondered if we could collectively work together to find ways that we can be a voice to work towards maybe getting some compliant, like could we collectively as an association engage with the Outfitters and Guides Association, for example, to have a discussion about, hey, this is a common challenge that all of our communities experience. We'd like to work out a solution with you all. I think
Or if we come up with one set of magic language, everybody can re-adopt it as part of their reserve tax ordinance, and then if we've got one that's working.
I think there's some logic in that. If we could figure out what the key issue is, we're trying to, I think Outfitters and Guides is a great example. Short-term rentals, that's obviously another.
Yeah, a lot of our problem is with people that they don't have an organization. They're not licensed by the state in any way. And they may have permits with the Park Service, usually to take people into Yellowstone, but that's sort of the only regulatory nexus I know of to get at them through. But anyway, appreciate hearing that we're not alone on this.
Maybe we need to figure out how to give your guides a badge and make them tax collectors on the river when they're on.
So I'm just looking at the Red Lodge one, which is again on the site. And we did change this based on this, so this is under the resort tax imposed, specifically tourist guides, outfitters that begin with the incorporated city of limits of Red Lodge. So that's our language, so, yeah, I said, you're welcome to go out and look and borrow steel from us, we'll steal from you.
Okay.
What else is on folks?
We have one that is a simmering topic, I would say, and will become hotter over the next probably year, is taking a relook at how we distribute our 25% property tax rebate. There's a lot of calls in the community now that we exempt second homes, that second homeowners don't get any of that money, and it all goes to just primary residents, which comes at an interesting time given what we're seeing with changes in second homeowner tax rates. So, and it's a delicate balance, I think, for us, because a lot of our second homeowners, which is roughly 28% of our community, I think, something like that, of our houses, they also tend to be the wealthiest individuals in town that also donate the most money in philanthropic ways. And I'm talking millions and millions of dollars. And so it's kind of, but there's a lot of calls from the housing side of the world that, oh, we need to exempt those people, they don't get any money. And it all goes just to local taxpayers. So we're looking at, Dana's has come up with 3 solutions now. I think we've got 3 options that we've sort of considered. And so because we just went back recently, we don't really want to go back to the ballot again right away. But I'm guessing in the next couple of years, we may see that happen, and what we ultimately do will be pretty interesting to see. The other side of that too is it's like our second homeowners, again, being people with a lot of money. They spend a lot of money in bars and restaurants too. You know, so it's kind of, I guess the philosophical debate there is you're killing the goose that laid the gold egg by trying to save a few dollars here and then ultimately really shoot yourself in the foot.
Are you guys doing the money back yourself? Ours just shows up on our county taxes. It's just there's a line.
Right, so that's how ours works now. It goes back based on taxable value. One of the challenges with this new bill, with the taxable value of your short-term rentals and long-term or second homes going up, they're gonna get more resort tax relief now, just because of the tax rate change.
Oh.
And so that's also a concern with the new property tax bill coming through. Now, I will say, and we are gonna wait, and I haven't really shared this with council, but they need to wait because that tax bill is going through litigation. We need to see if the state wins, that they can keep the primary versus secondary home classification in place. If the courts rule that that's okay, then I think we have a basis to do something similar in Whitefish where we can say, okay, the state can tax based on residency, then we can now tax or provide tax relief based on residency. The challenge is exactly what you explained though, is that right now it's a quick, we tell the county minus 29.5 mils off the tax bill for Whitefish, and it shows up resort tax relief minus 29 mils, calculates automatically. For us to do that, we'll have the 5% required by state law for communities that will go back to tax based on taxable value, because that's a true property tax relief. And then the 20% that we also give, we have to figure out a way of how do we give that back to primary residents, whether it's an application process, kind of like the state's rebate program. Is there a way, we're trying to see how the state and the counties are identifying second home versus primary homes on tax bills to see if there is something in their data that they'll be able to share. We don't know what the Department of Revenue is doing. I don't think they know what they're doing yet. And then, what other options do we have? So writing a check to every primary resident will be interesting. We also have to figure out how many we have, because a primary resident is also a renter. A long-term rental is taxed at a lower rate as well. So you have a renter, or is it just primary resident property taxpayers? Is it every individual? Is it just the household? So like there's there's a lot that we have to get down to. Some wanted to do it based on voter registration. I think what we've leaned toward though is it's a primary property owner, similar to the state's rebate that they did for $400 or whatever, if you signed up. By the way, the state really confirm if you actually were honest in those things, because I asked that question, like, okay, if we do something like this, how do we make sure people aren't fraudulently applying? They're like, oh no, we just assume we're gonna have some fraud.
They
And I was
just
like,
made the
"Oh,
penalty
fine."
big enough and hoped it was a discouragement is what they did. So.
Yeah, they just try to put that like, do not, apply or you're subject to, penalties or whatever.
Yep.
So it's still a bigger conversation that we're trying to have. But last session, I was like, when we were getting ready to talk about it, I was like, let's wait to see what the tax bills do. Now I'm like, let's wait to see what court does, because I think once the court process is done, the state of Hawaii taxes residents versus non-residents differently. Montana has never had that, and so we want to make sure that the courts agree that you can have that discrimination, as what non-residents will call it.
There's like 30 states that do. We're not unique.
No, we aren't unique,
We're
so
in
it'll just be
minority.
if Montana Constitution allows it, because it's a question of Montana Constitution, and so. That's gonna be, but it is something that we're looking at, because as I did my budget, I can tell you that our long-term or primary residents will get less tax relief. Like, they'll get down to maybe $150, and our second home will be like $400 that they're gonna get back. So it's gonna shift for sure.
Dan, we were talking, going toward the point of option number 3, I think, when you said, do like Montana, everybody gets a rebate. The third option, I think, was every property owner gets the same amount.
There was also that option, you're right, there was an option of like a flat rate so that it wasn't requested. And that might have been where we leaned toward as staff, because that's a lot easier to say, okay, how many properties do we have in our community? Or how many taxpayers based on your assessor number, and you just all get X dollar amount. That would be the easiest way to do it. It's still giving money back, and I think one of the things we haven't talked about is the impact on commercial properties, because if we take the 25% and we only are giving 5% to commercial and second homes, that's an impact to our commercial businesses as well. And yes, the residents are important, but our businesses are economic driver, and that's why we all get to work and live in Whitefish, or maybe just work in Whitefish. Whitefish sucks. But like that we have to think about that commercial side too, because they're also getting the benefit of our resort tax relief right now. And so that flat rate does make probably the most sense to at least say, okay, from a commercial versus when you're trying to tie commercial to it all. Or maybe your commercial has to be locally owned. I mean, there's things that we can do and make it very complicated, but staff will say, that's fine, but you're gonna have to fund additional positions, and then it's not worth it. How much of that 20% is now going to be to? Yeah, but it'll be interesting. I mean, it's this whole tax shift change this year, and the court process that they're gonna go through, they tried, I think the state tried to get them to act quicker, and the court's like, nope, so. We'll probably end up issuing tax bills this year, and if they reverse it, I have no idea how that will affect the community. It won't affect cities, like, we'll get the same money, it's gonna be, how do the counties now refund to certain people and then charge other people? That's gonna be county. Thank goodness I'm not in a county. That's what I'd say.
Richard's got a hand up.
Yeah. We were aware of some of the issues when we first set the thing up. So we split our tax rebate function into 2 parts to start with. One part that just went against the property tax across the board, and the other half as an equal amount that applied to each tax bill to be subtracted from the county fees and stuff. Since we don't have a local, a municipality in between, the county was the agency that was going to have to process it, and so at the end of our year, we can say to them, okay, here's the amount of money for each of those 2 parts, and leave it up to the county treasurer to say, okay, that means this amount against the goes is for paying down the property tax part, distributed the same way that that property would be paying the taxes anyway, and the other part is the equal amount, which uh, works out for us as being a significant part of our solid waste fee, which collecting that in Gardner, 50 miles away from everything else, is a significant part of our tax bill. We still get everybody complaining about, oh, that's a trivial thing. Well, hey, everything else we spend money on is saving you tax money too.
That's interesting that you guys did a flat rate in addition to the regular rebate to start.
Yeah.
It's
So we
nice.
split it in half for a flat rate and half going into the property tax as a literal property tax rebate.
Yeah, that's cool.
But it all gets reported to them on their property tax bill in November.
This is a really interesting topic at BIMRAD. We want to be able to provide tax relief, property tax relief. And as we start to market what we're doing this year, we're really thinking up front and about how all of the dollars that are being spent on the fire department are a savings. It is if we didn't give them this $400,000, it would be a property tax charge to you, right? It's a harder sell, but it's there. And you brought up, you and I have talked about this subject of what's going through the courts. I think it's really gonna be interesting to see where it all ends up. We on the mountain, we haven't figured out a way yet in which we can put a dollar amount of reduction on the tax bill. I haven't gone to gunpoint yet, but I mean, I can't get anybody to help me with that, right? Us with that. It's just not working. But we wanted to start to put some money away for this fund, right? So in our budget this year, we're actually showing property tax relief of 5% of the total dollars collected for our year. And it's in an account, and we basically have two ways in which we're saying that we can dole it out. One is if the Department of Revenue, when the state figures out what's going on, and the Department of Revenue will share with us who are true owners of homes on the mountain, we would like to then give property tax relief only to full-time residents. We're going down, that's the road we're going down. We've also said, if that doesn't happen, if we can't figure this out, we need to pull a trigger at some time, it will be with our partners in the fire department, and we will reduce mills. And a reduction in mills will then be on across the board on everybody in the mountain. So we've kind of put a stake in the ground that says we want to give relief. We don't know how yet. We're going to put some money away for it, but we don't totally have a way in which we can disperse the money yet.
My nickel said that they're gonna come down and say it says property tax relief, and you're not gonna get to distinguish between primary and secondary. If I were a betting man.
They don't have a.
We don't have a requirement in the
It's a very
district.
No, but I'm talking about the MCA code that allows resort tax does have a requirement for.
Only for.
Only for
Cities. Oh, that only applies to, okay.
Yeah.
And then I know the other thing I was gonna say is, West already showed us that it counts if you're, because you guys put all of yours in general fund, right? You said that's property tax relief because your taxes aren't going up as much as they would if we didn't do this, and that's held for 40 years now.
Our money goes into the general fund, like, so we transfer from the resort tax fund, $2 million into the general fund. But what we show is that the dollar, like that $2 million is the equivalent of how many mills, and so that's the reduction of mills that we would actually have to have that many more mills to fund it, and so we just show that 2 million as a function of mills essentially. And so in our budget, we actually levy for the need of the 2 million, and then we have a negative mill that is the $2 million going into the general fund. So it's just the way to show it, and that's why we show it on the tax bill that way. So our levy is higher than what's actually collected, because then we have the negative mill that's like a negative dollar amount. So our money does go in the general fund, but yeah, I think you guys don't do that on the tax bill in Yellowstone, but and for
Wait, you're saying you show a negative mill on the tax note?
and Columbia Falls, I think, followed suit with that. And our county is letting us do that, and I agree with Big Mountain, like you're just gonna have to give the money to the fire district, and then they show a negative mill on their portion of the tax bill. But yeah, and that was to make it really apparent so that we could point taxpayers and say like, because everybody's like, I don't get a check, I don't get my relief, and it's like, go look at your tax bill, you got relief if you're.
Well, that's exactly it, right? Because the state sent out money, sent out checks.
Yeah.
And so we've got that little fly in the way, but at the same time, so. Yeah, I think that I think we're gonna have a different discussion about it next time when we're all together. And see what's taking place with it. And I'm not sure what the best answer is. I would say that in Whitefish, that which got you the resort tax is was 25% back to the residents. It was a big deal. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. I don't have to tell you that. It's a lot of money. There's gotta be a way to claw that back.
I wonder if there's some way that we could reach some commonality, that we could get clarity around this, either through code or attorney general opinion or something. I mean, even something you're talking about. If you want to go down an interesting rabbit hole, go read about the Big Sky Fire Department's $8 million 4-year for collection, of which now we are stuck in the middle of trying to bail them out. The thought of applying a negative bill, actually, we never considered that. And that's actually a great way to do it. We should be doing it.
Yeah,
Right?
it's heavily subsidized, the fire department,
Yeah.
yeah.
There's certain levers that we can pull.
Yeah.
That some others can't in the room, right? And it's good in a way because we learn from each other. You know, sometimes when you can't do something, you can help somebody who can. And that's the way I kind of look at this sometimes is you say, well, from a Whitefish standpoint, you go, hey, here's what we're gonna do. We're not gonna give any tax relief to second homeowners. It's gonna be gone. But to all those homeowners that had property tax relief in the past, we're gonna grant it to you at the same amount. You're gonna get the same amount of money that you got last year is gonna continue on. I don't know how you show that on the form. But you all of a sudden claw back probably 40% of the money that's going out the door. And you go, oh, well, because 25%, I'm not sure what's going out the door, but it's probably what, 6-7 million?
So we collect about 7 million a year, so it's about 2.5.
Yeah, so
You know?
I mean, it's a way to start clawing it back, but if you could all of a sudden say, we've got an extra $1 million for our parks, or whatever, right? I think there's some opportunity, so that's why I bring it up to this group. I know it's not your problem. It's not your problem to say, well, gee whiz, Big Mountain can't figure out how to get their tax money back to their people. But I'm interested in it because this group is a lot of good thinkers, and if there's something that we're missing, man, I'm all over it. Just to say, gee whiz, this is usually in my business experience. This is what somebody usually would say. Have you ever spoken to Barbara at tax collection? And here's the phone number, and you give her a call, and she goes, "Well, how come you never called me before?" I'm looking for Barbara. Okay? If anybody knows Barbara and knows her number, please send it to me.
I will say that in Red Lodge, and ours was because our ordinance was up. But we changed our ordinance, like, and somebody else said that we don't do the 5% for administration anymore either.
Right.
And basically, when we did our reserve tax study 5 years ago, that was what people came back with is, you're taking our money, and yet, yes, we're getting our 5% back, and that's good, that's across the board, and that still seems like that's probably in line with what the intent was. But they, to go from 25 to 5, I think just ask, and people would say, no, go do good things with it, but it's part of that being able to tell the story of what you've done with it it's their idea to stop taking more than the 5%.
Yeah.
But sometimes you have to run it past them a few times before they think of it.
Did you just hit a dead end with DOR completely? Yeah. We're working, pot shops are a big issue for us, hot topic as well, we'll dive down that road, but we're trying to work with DOR to see if we can somehow tie into the licensing that they're doing with the marijuana dispensaries. We've done the same thing with liquor licenses as well, and we have not had success on that front either, so. Maybe Barbara works for someone other than DO.
Yeah. Maybe she's gonna open up, we don't have a dispensary on Big Mountain yet, maybe she's gonna open.
Yeah, there you go. Well, we're at time. That was a great discussion, everyone. Let's take a 10-minute bio break and then we'll jump into bonding 101. Yeah, that's.
I had a opportunity, I knew Middle.
Okay.
And great for
So David at the housing.
he was the one that
It was presented.
during several trips to into the field.
The remote wasn't working, so I just redid stuff. Oh.
Such an excellent.
I don't know. Yeah, so there's, yeah, for sure.
Oh, I think so.
Yes, yeah.
Let's make both screens the same. There's a version up on the. Is the remote working yet?
It was, did I give you the remote? Yeah, I get that, but it wasn't for a hot minute. Right. Right.
And then what I did is make both of these there with the games like. Yeah, right down the bottom charts.
This is right on the.
Okay. Yeah.
Then you have that.
Yeah, Susan celebrated great. They want to say it's. She's one who does it. So. She'll grab somebody. Hang out with someone.
To first plan and it was on.
Well, great. I think everyone knows Katie and I, so no need for introduction, but I did want to introduce Bridget Ekstrom from DA Davidson. She helped Big Sky through our most recent bonding process. There are people in the room that actually said they were looking forward to the bonding one-on-one presentation, so this is your audience. And I'd say there's varying levels of probably experience in the bonding realm. You have some in the room that are from communities that have a district similar to what Big Sky is, and then you have some municipal governments as well. You've got West Yellowstone, Whitefish, Red Lodge, and Columbia Falls in the room as well. So with that, I'll turn it over to you.
That's good. Well, should we have it interactive too? Ask questions along the way, or do you guys wanna hold it till the end?
Go for it.
Okay, so ask questions as we go, maybe. I mean, I was gonna try to, I think, do 10 minutes and then we'll have time for it at the end, but, so yeah, so,
as Dan said, I'm Bridget from DA Davidson, and I've been working in public finance for 30 years, covering schools, cities. I work on fire districts. I just met with Columbia Falls School District on their bond proposition. I just closed the bond for Whitefish schools on their issuance. So I kind of cover Flathead County on their $100 billion jail bond. So I cover kind of a wide swath of different types of bonds. And so that was kind of the first topic is, really what is from the base perspective, what is a bond issue? And it's just like a loan would be, you're trying to accomplish a project, just like Big Sky did on their cold smoke and their community parks projects, and you need the money up front. So just like you would with a home mortgage or a commercial project, we would take a look at what, the financials are of the district or the revenue source, and we would come up with a plan, the term of the bonds and all the variables, what your credit quality is and some of those factors that we'll talk about after you guys kind of cover your projects. But so we really just on this slide kind of look at what the top is kind of that capital planning. What are your needs? Identify maybe if you have some kind of long-term plan, which is the best case. Rating agencies, as you guys found out, love to have, that long-term plan of, what you're gonna accomplish over a number of years. And, we have, some IRS provisions that say when you issue bonds, you need to be able to expend 85% within 3 years of those bond proceeds. And that's to get the tax exempt status. So the reason why DA Davidson is involved, we're based in Great Falls and we have 10 Montana offices. And so we will look to come in and issue tax exempt bonds so you can get that low borrowing cost. So in Big Sky's case, the rates were just a little under 4%. Kind of range, or around 4% for we did their projects in two different kind of forms. The community parks project at 6.8 million, we did as a 20-year bank placement where we went out to the banks. What we were really looking for was very advantageous call features where you can pay off the bonds from excess revenues. And Chris and I just talked about that before the meeting. So their goal was always to let's issue the debt and have a 20-year term to make sure and show coverage. But if we have extra money, we want to pay down the debt as quick as possible. So that was one of their big goals. And then the second one, and because we issued under 10 million in a calendar year, we were able to take advantage of what's called bank qualified rates. So those were very favorable. So their call feature was they could repay the bonds at any time, and the rate from the bond was just under 4%. On the other side, on the community or the cold smoke project, that was a longer term, 30 years. We ended up issuing just under 53 million in bonds. We broke that up into $5,000 increments and sold it to individuals, institutions. Kind of was a nationwide with 6 times more orders than bonds. And so we're really just trying to get as much demand for the bonds to lower the rates and achieve a really good borrowing cost. So that slide kind of talks about that 3 times rule. You can reimburse yourself if you adopt a reimbursement resolution. You can reimburse yourself for like maybe architect fees or engineer fees that kind of happen in advance of solidifying the project. So those are some of the considerations. And then maybe on the next slide, this is just highlighting the reason why we're involved is because you get really great tax exempt rates. And so when we're involved, we do that analysis of, should we place it with a bank? Should we break it out into $5,000 increments? What are the advantages? What are the terms? What are the repayment features? Do we, what are the costs of issuance, to get a credit rating and all of those things. So this just shows over time where rates have been. As you saw with inflation spiking up, we did have much higher rates here recently. But still reasonable, if you get a commercial loan at 7 to 8%, our bond issues in Montana, because the interest income to the purchasers of the bonds is exempt from both state and federal income taxes. So that's the advantage of issuing tax exempt bonds. And in Montana, it's pretty strong just because we have a state income tax as well. So So that's kind of what we work with, bond counsel firm, Dorsey and Whitney, is the most prominent one in Montana. And so they'll give a tax opinion and we work through all that paperwork. There's a lot, as Kristen and Danny can say, there's a lot of paperwork in getting the bond issue off the ground, and being able to take advantage of those rates, checking all the boxes with the IRS and state laws and local laws and back to one of the prior slides, one of the main things, and if anyone wants to read the full official statement, we have copies you can kind of look at, but it is looking at what your true debt limitation is, and that's set by state law. And if you want to go out to the voters, as Big Sky did, but you can, factor in what is the best capital plan in order to accomplish the plan.
Cool, thank you for that. Maybe before we pivot over to West Yellowstone, how many of you have had experience in the room with issuing bonds or going through this process? Showing, it's quite a few of you, and there's some of you that I believe might be looking at that. So West Yellowstone is, I believe, we'll turn it over to you.
So I remember when I first started with my job, I listened to Dorsey and Whitney, Dan Simmons, and he was explaining bonds, and I was like, oh my gosh, okay, what did I just do? So I'm gonna kind of give you a much summer level of what we just went through as administration and like walking through the process. Because there's so much that goes into it. And that's the first thing I will tell you is the most important stuff is hiring someone to help you through this process. You have to have Dorsey and Whitney, you have to have someone like yourself, just because there's so much that goes into this and so many laws you have to watch continuously. So everybody knows, I think at this point in the whole nation, that wastewater treatment plant for West Yellowstone was a big ticket item. $7 million project turned into a $38 million project. And obviously we did not have the cash on hand, just be like, here's $38 million, fill that's a 1.6 million gallon mechanical wastewater treatment plant. So there was no question for us what we had to do. It wasn't, just like, I wonder which direction we should go. We had to go through and do bonds. We were able to get ARPA money, our GL money, and then we have done sections of bonds throughout the way. So I don't remember what I put aside. So, okay. Yeah. So here I'm going to go through like the budgeting piece of it, and planning for that was huge. You have to stay very, very organized when you're doing one of these and planning ahead, because you can't even begin to know what you need, where you're at, when you're doing this. So detail out your budget is the number one step, then where you're at. And then
What's that total say? Sorry.
38.
About
552, 244, yeah. Yeah, so here, obviously we had our ARPA grants, our GL grants. We had SRF loan A, which is $750,000, that's potentially forgiven. So you still have to go out for bonds on that, but it could be forgiven at the end of the project. Loan B was $15 million. These two were done in 2024 when we started our project in May of 2024. With our contractor, and then SRF loan C is $100,000. That's also potentially forgiven. And then you have SRF loan D, which is another $15 million. That one, those two were done in August of 2025, and then we're potentially still going out for loan E. We have not bonded for that one yet, but another 2.9 million for this project. So when I first started talking to Dan and his team with Trisha, it's finding how you're gonna pay back the bond, right? You have to think through that and like make sure you have coverage requirements. So with an SRF loan, most more, you have to have the 110% of coverage requirements. And so we had to do these breakdowns of what's your O&M gonna be, what's gonna be your revenue, and how you're gonna supplement that, because for West Yellowstone, our rates were not high enough in our water and sewer funds to cover this at all. We have some of the lowest rates in the state. So with our town council, we had to look at resort tax, right? And that's why we're here today is what can resort tax do for you? And so we pledged for the next 40 years. $1 million from our 1% resort tax will go into our 5320 fund, our sewer, and help pay back these loans. So we made that pledge through resolution. So every year we have to consider that. This.
As you can clearly read.
You don't need to read it because there's a lot of actual roads here that are collapsed because this worksheet is much bigger than this. I can promise you that. But I can get it on screen. I just want to show you though, this process can be tedious, but if you stay organized and on top of what you're doing every single day with your big projects, you have to. It would be about impossible to climb back through the weeds of this. And they care about where every cent goes. And I mean down to the penny. I've had one rejected because I was off by 3 cents.
Mm.
You know how much time I can take to go back through every invoice, find 3 cents. So just make sure you're staying extremely organized. These are going to be required by your funders too when you're looking at big projects, and especially when you're dealing with federal funds. So just stay on top of it. There's way more tabs to this Excel than what I'm going to show you today. But yeah, the organization that you have to do for a bond is entirely important. So challenges and surprises. The amount of paper that I'm not going to talk about that part. But read through it. Like I spent probably a solid sections of 3 different days reading through this, marking it up, and then I called my council and I'm like, what do you mean by this? Because your biggest job is to protect your municipality, your district, whatever it may be. And they're kind of using like broad paperwork here, you know, wording, understand it. And then the next thing I'll tell you too that I did is after I was done with this section of the bonds, and I took probably a month off of it of just like reading the documents. I went back to it and then I made a spreadsheet kind of like, these are our requirements that we have to make sure we do to stay in compliance. Because I may not be there, I hope I'm not there in 40 years. You know, so the next person can have that and they know exactly what the requirements are. Because when they're starting that job or picking that up or your new treasurer's doing this, they're not gonna wanna read documents this thick. So make sure that you kind of outline those for them, but send it back to your council as well, being like, okay, I think this is what I'm supposed to do. After I read it at my level, please read it at your level and make sure I'm not missing anything. And I think that was one of my biggest takeaways is making sure you're up in compliance with bond. Just because you bonded and now you have your loan payments and now you've done all this work, the work doesn't end there with bonds. So just not to make it sound scary because it's not. So just make the groundwork of it. It flows from there. All right, and then there's another picture of our beautiful wastewater treatment plant. We were able to connect last Wednesday morning, and so we started the very slow run of water going into our wastewater treatment plant. So we were very excited to see this project moving forward.
Congrats, that's awesome. How long did that take?
I don't know how long we've actually been working on the project, but
Yeah.
2018, I
Yeah.
suppose.
Wow.
wow.
Nice work.
Like you worked on it.
Yeah.
That's that's
That's correct. So I'm like, it's crazy. You know, and then be looking forward to future projects. For us, when I first started, we had 3 loans out there and then us looking at debt management overall. Because now, yes, we have the wastewater treatment plant, but this only allows us the door now for attainable housing and our 80-acre project, right? So like probably gonna be more bonds, but making sure you're being fiscal responsible and all of that too. So, you know, just forward thinking a lot. Where are you at today? and stay as organized as you can.
Yeah, have your ducks in a row as
Yeah.
much as possible before going into the process.
Yeah.
No.
Did you have to raise water rate or sewer rates, also to cover the debt?
Yeah, we did, it was like $3. We have SFBs, so like one residence is one SFB, so went up about $3. For residents over a 3-year period, like 1 year is $3, $3 and $3. We have not looked at raising rates after we went through that 3-year cycle yet. Thankfully my counsel's not in here right now, but we'll probably be looking at that again soon, because we have a lift station now, everything goes, yeah. Yeah, and we still have some of the lowest rates in Montana, unfortunately.
Do you know what you would have had to raise them if you didn't use it?
Yeah. Like waterfall, I think.
Oh, it's gonna like triple your.
Yeah,
rates.
at least,
Oh.
yeah, it was,
It's really cool.
we're very low.
And that's just base fees, right? That
Yeah.
don't include the
Yeah.
usage fee.
Yeah.
Did your project increase capacity in? Yeah.
Yeah, so with our lagoon system, we couldn't even really handle what we had. 4th of July weekends, we would flood the lagoon system.
Yeah.
Because we have a lot more people flushing toilets than we do in January 2nd, so it's crazy, like, this was definitely tourist impacted though too, because of that, right? And so that's why we were able to use resort.
And I think resort tax districts gained the authority in 2018 to bond, so that was a major win that took a while to actually implement for districts, but municipal governments have had that ability prior to that bill being passed. But
And you just have public hearings, right? You don't have to have any kind of vote for that.
Yeah, we did not do just a comp.
Did you have any complaints on either public hearings at all? No.
you should tell them their rates are gonna go up 3x, otherwise.
Yeah, that's a good point, yeah.
I mean, they knew, like, we've been working on this project for almost 8 years.
Yeah.
So people knew, and they already saw the little bit of rate increase. And when I started my position, yeah, it was during that, and we had just changed how we calculated SFEs and all that, so my first 4 months of my job was people coming in and screaming at me, I'm like, my job. So,
How long, when did you start, did you say?
end of 22.
Okay.
Well, thank you for that. Exciting. Congratulations that is getting turned on. I think for us in Big Sky, step one was really getting a clear understanding of what the community need was. We started a process back in 2019 with the community visioning session that kind of assembled, called our Big Sky Vision Strategy, that assembled kind of the broad-based needs throughout the community and gave us a North Star, if you will, that our community could be able to get behind. But what we found through actually executing the visioning statements and all of the initiatives and work that needed to be done was we really didn't have a solid understanding of what from a financial perspective, what the large scale capital needs were going to be within the community. And so I know many of you do have capital improvement plans for your own respective jurisdictions. Big Sky did not have one. Big Sky had one that was for part of our district. We span 2 counties, both Madison and Gallatin County. The Gallatin County portion of Big Sky has a zoning district that had a statutory requirement of a capital improvement. So we had an inkling of the knowledge of what community need was from capital improvement plan for just the Gallatin portion of Big Sky that was from back in 2010. 11, somewhere in that time frame. But we knew that we were missing a fair amount of impact from growth within and reflecting that in the capital improvement plan, and really wanted to understand what is it that the Big Sky community values and what is it that we can actually. And a lot of the message that we received from the community was built around livability in the community of Big Sky, whether that be cost of living in general, cost of living for housing, whether that be rental or ownership. And we began to understand a little bit more about what some of our large scale initiatives we're going to look like. We also went through a process using the 1% for infrastructure to support our wastewater treatment facility in Big Sky as well. That was in 2020, when we, through COVID, somehow implemented a voter approved ballot initiative for a project at that time that was, I think, supposed to be a $35 million project or a little bit less than that, and ballooned into a much larger project, but $27 million out of resort tax funds for the 1% for infrastructure were committed to that project. And it's been a huge success, but we knew that the 1% for infrastructure was not going to really accelerate us and propel the community in a direction that it needed to go. Namely, relative to the big elephant in the room for us was housing. I think the average sale price for median sale price for a home in Big Sky is what's the last number one you all heard? $2+ million. I think the lowest product price point in the market right now is around 1.1. And so when we were going through all of these priorities that existed through the capital improvement plan, we knew that we needed to have some level of structure and how we were going to determine which of these were going to, and this is coming from the grant world, not the budget world. So using the district kind of perspective on this, we opened up a grant process. It's not a grant process, but it was basically an application process for large scale capital initiatives. And we actually received, I would say,
7 or 8 projects?
7 or 8 applications during that process. Ironically enough, one of them was the essentially the next phase of our water and sewer treatment plant, which we had already paid for the first one. But it was really important for us to engage the public and solicit for public feedback as we were going through this process. It took us probably 4 months to actually go through, 3 months to go through a review process of those 7 projects, and really vetting them for need and what would actually help to move the needle. And so as a community, we determined that there were 2 kind of core priorities within the community that the resort area district was interested in pursuing for bonding initiatives. One of those was a park project operated through our nonprofit BSCO. It's somewhat similar to, I'm sorry, what was the name of the group that was giving us the tour of the trail?
Oh, Whitefish Lakes Park.
That's a good analogy, I think, to a certain degree of how BSCO operates. And that facility received, or that improvement received a $6 million bonding commitment from the voters. Both projects did go onto the ballot. We actually are statutorily required to move these to the ballot, and we approved up to $60 million for a housing project in Big Sky that our commitment was to purchase 100 acres for the Big Sky Community Housing Trust. And the main thing that was different about this project compared to many of the other housing projects that we have within the community was that it focused on providing, our housing trust really does a good job of trying to represent and support kind of the spectrum of AMIs that exist for those who qualify for housing projects. And we were missing kind of a couple of ladders,
Missing middle.
the missing middle, the next step in the rung or next rung in the ladder of someone being able to move from whether it be a condo or an apartment into a single family home. And this project, in addition to a couple of hundred of apartment type structures, will also have 125 single family homes, all of them deed restricted, all of them achieving or trying to achieve affordability thresholds. I think the last I heard was targeting somewhere in that $450,000 to $500,000 range for a single family home in Big Sky, which seems crazy for some communities. In Big Sky, that actually is a fairly good and affordable deal. So we moved those forward in Big Sky through a pretty major public education campaign called Livable Big Sky. And that campaign, we actually have a couple of the posters and all sorts of propaganda that we put out for the community here. I'll pass some of that around to you if you want, but I think that the main lesson that we learned from building all that community support was that it was really important for us to ensure that we had the community's trust behind this project. We were doing a project with one of the larger developers within the community, Lone Mountain Land Company. The project, or the 100 acres that we were purchasing for moving forward with this cold smoke project was assembled over time from that developer. And I think they wound up, I forget what the appraised value was, it was 45, and they wound up selling it for 38. Yeah. They've been a great partner through this project. They are a large developer in the community, and that comes with some baggage as well. So there was a heck of a lot of public education that we had to go through within our community to really be fully transparent about how the transaction was going down. No, it is not lining the pockets of the developer. In fact, we're lucky that the assembly of 100 acres in Big Sky, which it's probably the last 100 acres undeveloped in Big Sky, was done so above board, and it took a lot of education really to get people behind that. We hosted a variety of events. I think the most interesting of them was the Dirtbag Opera, where I feel like I got doged on stage and in front of a whole bunch of dirtbags, which was kind of an interesting process. But we try to meet everyone where they're at and help to educate folks on, you know, the importance of resort tax, what a bond is, and what these votes would mean for the community itself. They were two separate ballot measures. So when the ballot was received, you would see the community park initiative, and then you would see the housing initiative as well. And there was a lot of debate as to whether or not we wanted to break these projects off separately or have separate votes for them. And at the end of the day, we think giving the voters as much choice in their decision as possible was really important. So the bond for the cold smoke project was taken directly from the 1% for infrastructure. That's the commitment for that particular project, and we do use the 3% as a backstop in the event of a catastrophic event. And the park bond was taken out of the 3%. As I mentioned earlier, we do have or are building a more robust reserve strategy. And so our intention is to pay off the park bond within the next 3 years. That's what we've laid out as our strategy. It does limit the amount of grants that we're able to give to the nonprofit community, but we feel like paying that debt down as quickly as possible is really important. It was also really important for us to have the ability to call the bond for the cold smoke project. I think 2032 is the first call that we have. Yeah. And then a couple of years later, we have the ability to do a second call. We'll see. I think if we continue on the trajectory that we're on, and there's not another major initiative that is needed within the community, which I know there will be, we hope to pay that off as quickly as possible. I'm not sure that'll be as fast as the other one, but we'll see. So I'll kick it back to you.
Yeah, I was just looking up the stats on that. So on the 1% for the cold smoke project, debt service ended up being about 3.4 million, and right, you know, last year they were taking in 6.1 million. So there's that available excess of just under 900,000. Then that money, you know, hopefully continues and can pay off that debt early. That again was a 30-year term, so a little longer term with more flexibility. And then on the 3%. The debt service on that one ended up being about 500,000, and they're taking in around 14 million, is that right?
Yep.
And so 3 million kind of remain on that debt capacity analysis. So there's a lot of extra ability to issue more debt if they wanted to, but we were pretty close to your debt capacity on the 1%. So.
And from an outsider, never having gone through this, I wholeheartedly agree with you. You have got to get good legal counsel, and you've got to get someone that knows the bond market very well, because there are a million acronyms that I still don't even necessarily fully understand.
Yeah.
But there were two components that I found particularly interesting. One of them being what you're going to talk to here related to the bond rating, but also our insurance coverage as well. And we actually invited the folks from S&P to come out and visit Big Sky in person, and then assured guarantee from the insurance side. And there was a fair amount of explaining and really education around what resort tax is, who owns different parts of property within the community and what the risk is. And these are folks coming out from, you know, New York City and Dallas and larger cities that a place like Big Sky and even Montana in general is not familiar to them. I think the most alarming thing to me, the gal from Assured came out and she goes, "Why would anyone want to live in Big Sky, Montana?" And I was like, "Well, we got some work to do, I think."
It's a cold sunny day.
But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, I think what was most
And she was not a skier, so.
not a skier too. But what was most helpful is I really feel like we did have our ducks in a row. If there was a question that was asked of us, our team, Kristen and our board member John were right on it and had a response out within the day. And all of those things made a really big difference at the end of the day. But what's a bond rating to begin with?
Yeah, so the credit rating process you can see up here is just an indication, just like you would as an individual, you know, what is your credit score, what is the bank willing to loan you money, you know, what rate. So the better the credit, the lower the rate. And so we were, you know, really wanted, especially when we're selling, you know, up to 60 million, we wanted to make sure that we were in good financial footing to get the lowest possible borrowing cost. So when we brought the rating analysts out, you know, it was really key to have them be able to see what the resort tax, how is the resort tax being generated? We didn't know because we haven't had a history of Montana of having, we have a lot of bond ratings across Montana, but not on a big resort tax issuance like this. So like in your case, I mean, the SRF loans are what, 2.25, 2 yeah. I mean, those rates are heavily subsidized. And then our tax exempt rates are subsidized because of the state and federal tax exemption, but still, we wanted to get that narrowed down as much as possible on 60 million. So we ended up issuing 53, just under 53 million, because we ended up with something called bond premium, and there's some other factors that go into it that we don't need to go take a super deep dive today. But the stronger the credit rating, the lower the rates, because our bondholders, and especially because we're asking people like Vanguard, State Farm, Travelers, you know, all the major players across the country, you know, to participate in the bond offering, and we had local participants too, but we had a really big national. In fact, we're gonna put the bond issue up for a national bond deal of the year, so we'll see if we.
Is that the Bonnie Award?
Yeah, the Bonnie Award. So we'll see if we can. And go out to New York for the award ceremony. Not about that, but it was a super unique structure. The rating analysts were really very, very impressed with everything that, you know, all the books and records and the way that they managed the district really was highlighted nicely. In there's a couple of copies of the rating report. I have actual copies here if you want to read them, because you can't see it on the slide. It's just kind of an example of what it looks like. But there's so many metrics that they look at. We weren't sure on the subjective side that wasn't just perfectly measurable where we would land, because you know we had full-time residents of what, 1,000 some, you know, when you add in all the part-time residents and the people there for you know, visitation and tourism, that swells to 11,000 maybe or something, but that's smaller, you know, they're used to seeing, you know, in other communities, sales tax and other kind of comparable bonds, you know, communities of 1 million, and you get all these bumps up for large communities, and we were very small, so that was one of the drawbacks for us. But yeah, it's just a matter of, this made the bonds very marketable. We were able to get a really low rate at, if you were to annualize, we did a 30-year term, but I figured out if we were to do a 20-year term, the comparative number would have been about 3.9%. So it was a really great rate and all. And so the credit rating just goes into, like, if you guys are looking at a project, you know, that planning component, making sure you have audits and We have clean audits and those kind of things that you would kind of clean house in your financial picture early on. But that Danny has up there is just a cover of the official statement. This is just a part of it. It's like including the audit, like a 200-page document. And then so that's the bonds again for the Cold Spot project were sold in $5,000 increments. So more than 10,000 different individual bonds were sold. And that's just the disclosure piece. And then on the other side was what we sent out to local banks to be able to get a favorable response back on the community parks project. So that second slide was that's a copy of the rating report, which is about 5 pages, and I have copies here to hand out. So I'm trying to think if there's any highlights. Can you guys think of anything I didn't really cover? Everything that they've done, that's the coverage table. So that kind of goes through, again, a lot of the fine points. That goes through, looking here, what the debt service requirements are, 1% collections at 6 million, the 3% collections at 17, once the other bonds go moving up 17, starting at 16, and then what the coverage factor is, and that's a key factor of what rates are going to be. You guys had coverage requirements too, so you just don't want to over indebt yourself. So they really have 6 times coverage when you factor in the 3% money. So that was the big picture was that the rating agencies loved that there was that second source of money, not just the 1%, but the 3% that could use it be a backstop. And then the remaining, this 19 million is the grant monies. And then the key takeaway, I'm surprised I didn't say this earlier, was that the rating agency analyst said, boy, why don't more communities? This seems like such a good model, like hearing how you manage the community and being able to be super responsive with your resort tax monies. They said it was a light went on for them that they thought that they're doing such a good job of being able to, handle maybe some preschool needs and fire district needs, water and sewer, and cover all of those things. And they thought, maybe, nationwide, we should have, more cities operate as responsibly as they felt like they're able to do. So.
Yeah, I think, speaking of, Senator Fern, the Workforce Housing Initiative, I missed that earlier, that was added in, was the HB 172, I think. The 1% for infrastructure was just missing the little last word that we needed for what qualifies as infrastructure, and that was added in this last session, and we picked that up and ran with it immediately after the session closed, got our ballot language into the county and began moving immediately towards a vote in May. And then I think called you like the day after and started working and ultimately closed on this deal, just for like length of time for everyone's perspective. I think we closed on January like
third,
which was a wild ride that took a lot.
It was very
tight
timeline. Yeah. Well, that's
What were the results of the election of the bond and increasing of the tax?
I want to say it wasn't an increase of the tax because we already had the 1% in place and we're collecting it and paying off another project. That was another odd layer of complexity, as we already had commitment for our original 1% project that was that wastewater treatment plant that I was talking about. And so we had to demonstrate that we had enough to pay that project off. We actually would have just paid the project off directly through our debt service commitments, annual debt service commitments, but the water and sewer district's rates were gonna get all messed up if we did all of that at once. And so we still have an account that's holding $11 million. Sure, water and sewer district will take the interest on the $11 million and still pay you on the remainder of it. But we had to set up a reserve that specifically paid off the escrow. That's a good way of framing it. And then when we went to vote, the park bond was more successful than
Like
the
70-something%.
70-30.
Statement was 81%. You have to reinstate.
Oh, also.
Extended it.
Extended, yeah.
Also, as a side note, we needed to extend our resort tax so then we could show that we had the ability to take the debt out that far. So we took our resort tax out to 2065. So at least no one's gonna tinker with that for quite some time. And that helped us to also be able to extend this. I think the cold smoke project.
61.
60-40. So like 70-30 on the park, 60-40 on the.
But 81%, and the analysts commented on that, like across the country, to get an 81 for whatever it was percent vote, yes. To extend, I mean, that's just unusual to get that kind of support, so. I just can't say, enough how, just the operations and what you're able to prove was part of the reason we were able to get a AA- kind of rating. Which is, yeah, really, really strong rating.
It was a major investment. Not so much on the dollars and cents, on just time and energy for us to really get out there and educate. I mean, in May, we were looking at, there was a family forum on March 4th, Pizza with the Purpose, March 11th, and a lot of these are events that we co-hosted with either the chamber or the Big Sky Community Housing Trust or our local coordinating council. We did the Dirtbag Opry on March 20th, then we did Ballots and Brews on April 1st. Not using resort tax money to do Ballots and Breakfast, open house at the community park, and this voter education event and the livable Big Sky brand actually has lived on beyond last year. When we did this, we actually used the same public education campaign for a hospital's wellness district initiative that we had in our community.
I was gonna say, beyond those, we did 12 to 15 grassroots meetings where we ended up going to boards of parent teacher organizations or homeowners associations, and we present to the boards so they could then communicate to their people as well.
And it was a very collaborative project with the Parks and Trails folks as well as with the Housing Trust in terms of input on how we want to frame this, what's the true need, and how are we going to really help the public understand the importance of this and housing. I think we have a need in Big Sky. I want to say it was 12 or 1,300 in total. I don't remember the by-when date over the next 5 or 10 years. This will help us get a little bit of that, but we need Cold Smoke 2.0 and Cold Smoke 3.0 in all reality to really accelerate this. And we've supported our housing trust in other programs in the past. Annually we support a short-term rental incentive program for owners to pull their short-term rental off and then turn that into a long-term rental through something called Rent Local. And then there's a program called Good Deeds that we also essentially use resort tax funds with the Community Housing Trust to buy deed restrictions at appropriate times when the opportunity exists. And this is about the third or fourth infrastructure project that we've had with the Community Housing Trust. And we've successfully gotten a lot of those rungs on the ladder on the lower end of the AMI, and we're really needing to work up to address the missing middle. That's our focus. Questions?
Richard, what do you consider to be a small bond?
Oh, yeah, good question. So we do anywhere as low as, because you can do intercap loans, for smaller projects, but for the bank loans, we just did a couple for the county, or Gallatin County for $1 million kind of range, yeah. So
What's your wheelhouse?
that'd be so we do a lot of bank placements for $1 million where we'll put together the package and we'll send it out, to all banks all across the state. And sometimes we have a bigger pool of like 70 banks across the kind of the region. So $1 million, we do a lot of $1 million range. But then we do, like the Flathead jail project at 105 million. And so somewhere between $1 million and 105 is kind of our range. Or we just did Helena Schools, their projects were approved by the voters like 280 million. So we're working on those right now too. But yeah, so big ones. But the middle, the $1 million to 10 million is a very common range.
Thanks.
Yeah, and I also have a Barbara answer for you, but I was thinking, when we do a lot of assessment bonds, like special assessments where it's a, SID or an RID where, you're assessing like maybe an improvement district that's getting roads or whatever, and then we have different formulas we use for assessment bonds that might be front footage, assessed based on front footage, but per parcel is pretty common, so I don't know if there's a way that DMR would ever, do a per parcel, reimbursement or something that would be different than property tax based on valuation, but maybe then you could catch more of the, not the out of staters that have really high value homes, but maybe make it a per parcel, fixed assessment back to the, property owners or something, so, yeah, yes.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So in Whitefish, we actually did private placement bonds with First Interstate and Glacier Bank for
Yeah.
our parking structure SID. The business, well, it was directed toward commercial and short-term rental. Let me tell you, I'll never do another SID like this, but check out those ideas. They also get credit for parking spaces provided, so we have to go check parking spaces,
Oh, that's funny.
It's a complicated SID for the assessment, but both of our local banks, it was about $960,000 and they split it half and half. And so we actually did like we have two different ones for that project, but it was kind of cool because we were able to use our local banks in Whitefish in our community. So I haven't been through a open like a bond market issuance with the city. Yeah, so on that project with the housing, it was pretty much shovel ready. You knew what was gonna happen. That's your 1%, and how many, you said the term was, is it 30 years? So how much of, I guess that's just the 1%. Is there a portion that you retain for other projects for cash funding with that 1% as part of that, or is that?
We essentially use the 3% as cash,
You're using 3% cash.
and 1% as commitments is maybe one way of looking at
Yeah.
it. And when we did the wastewater, there's two things about the original wastewater treatment plant, and I think this was a creative idea and it helped us in this situation. When we committed that original 27 million for the wastewater treatment plant, we wrote into the agreement between the water and sewer district and BizRad that they had to dedicate 500 SFEs to go towards affordable housing, workforce housing. And when the plant was done, now we had the SFEs and we were able to apply them directly to this project, which was super helpful. The other piece, what was I gonna say on the water treatment plant? Was a good thing. It'll come to me in a bit.
Can you?
I don't know about that.
And on that, so on the 1% state law was that you couldn't exceed 70, debt service couldn't exceed 70% of revenue on, by state law for the 1%. So we ended up with coverage based on that number about 1.4 times. So we're taking in, an additional revenue over what the debt service is. And so that's where the debt service payments are around 3.4 million, but they're taking in around 6. So they have that extra almost 900,000 that comes off every year that they will pool and pay the bonds off early. Yeah, so that gives the banks and everybody assurance that there's coverage and the ability to, but the thing about, the resort tax money is that some of it's, like elastic, like maybe if there's a financial downturn, if, they have a bad ski year, which they didn't even see a downturn with that, but if you have less revenues, the banks want to be covered. So there's enough ability in there to pay off the bonds with the extra amount that they're
Well, I was gonna say also on the 27 million, we didn't issue debt service through resort tax, the water and sewer district did. We just had an agreement for a payment schedule using the 1%.
Okay.
On the original project of the water and sewer district.
And then on that project, we helped the water and sewer district on, so we were not working with you on that, but we were working with Fixed Water and Sewer District, and then we ended up placing that with Glacier Bank. Yeah.
Can you go back and you just said 70%, you were talking about 70% on the, where did that fit into that
So
again?
that's a debt limit on state code, so it says.
So like of the collections you're making?
So debt service can't exceed 70% of the revenue raised from the resort tax levy for infrastructure, so there was that was in state code. And then on the 3% side, there's a 5 time, you take the collections over 5 years and do an average of the 5 years, and it can't, and the debt's be over 25%. So that number, there's a variable in there as well.
And we experienced so much growth. I remember we had to wait until the fiscal year actually closed so that we were able to capture the 5th year on the house.
Yeah, so we were doing a lot of numbers in last fall, trying to, get the collections in, pay off, put that money in the escrow. It was complicated, and then we needed to do it all by as close to January as possible. For just all the commitments on the close book.
So how's the project going?
They broke ground yesterday. Is that what I saw an email on? So they're rocking and rolling.
Yeah, but did you want to talk about legislation, how it needed to change so that we could move more of this into the 1% or no, or stay on that?
Legislation.
What is that? House Bill 162 and Senate Bill 172. Oh, okay, because the infrastructure and land, how one was in the 1%, one was in the 3%. And then also too, because of the favorable rating, we ended up saving what, 20?
Yes, 22 million. That's actually good. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, we ended up, because of that low credit, because when you went out to the voters, using conservative numbers with that high credit at AA minus, plus we bought insurance and jumped it up to AA. We ended up with really good rates. Ended up with less debt service by about 22 million over the term of the bonds than originally projected. So yeah, that's good.
What are you doing with all your spare time now that you finished doing this?
Yeah.
Oh, we just did another ballot initiative. That one, but yeah, that one passed like 93%.
Really?
Which is absolutely astonishing.
Yeah.
Astonishing. Yeah, no free time for us. We move on to the next. But we do a bad job of stopping to celebrate our successes, which this is a cool project. If anyone is ever interested in coming to Big Sky and seeing it, David O'Connor is a very inspiring and talented housing trust manager in Big Sky. He's been around for 30+ years in Big Sky. A Yellowstone guy, came out and never left, and operated Bucks T4 for the longest time, went to retirement, and then came back and now he's running our housing trust. But the big
deal is you've proven this can be done. Right,
For
so
sure.
our imagination has just been raised, and we communicate that with housing folks, with the resort, but others who said, we don't know how, or that was hard, it's not possible, is you've just raised the plane for everyone.
And we owe Senator Fern a debt of gratitude for really pushing the housing, for adding the housing piece into the 1%. It's just one word.
Yeah.
But it opened up this to be a potential. So.
How is this funded? That you've got the housing trust purchase the land with their own fund?
The bond purchase.
The bond actually purchased the land. So this is like a fully resort tax funded housing development.
The land is.
Yes,
Just
just,
the land.
and then you're deed restricting it to the developers.
Yes.
So that's private developers using free land with deed restrictions.
Yep. That's right.
Cause the land was what, 30, what did you say, 30, and then 15 million for infrastructure.
Horizontal infrastructure though.
Yeah.
Okay, so
we've
it's
infrastructure and horizontal.
Right.
Vertical construction is the private development.
Yeah.
And so it's a good question. The actual sales price will be bought down with philanthropy is the final piece of it. Philanthropy is going to play a major role in bringing, an $800,000 unit at cost down to $500,000.
Okay. Danny, you used a term earlier, you said buying the deed restriction. You said we're buying deed restriction, do you remember that?
No, but I could have said it.
Good deeds.
Good deeds, yes,
Yeah.
yes, sorry. We have, the Housing Trust has a program where they purchase deed restrictions from interested parties in the community.
That's, I would say, from whom? I was like, wait, what?
It could be either someone coming in that's purchasing a new home that wants a little bit of extra capital to go towards the down payment, and they put a deed restriction on it there. Or it could be someone that owns a home and is willing to put a deed restriction on it today and brings that capital just into their pocket on that front. But it stays with the property is
Right, follows the land, but I'm looking at that from a TIF district or as something else too. Or even just, it just literally will give you X, and are they time limited?
the deed restriction.
Yeah, how long are your?
I think they're in perpetuity. I can put you in touch with DSC.
Yeah, that's a whole interesting concept and conversations.
Yeah, I'm happy to make an introduction with David Overhunter. It's a pretty cool program.
Yeah, if you go on the website, there's a lot of information about it.
They what?
On the website, on their website, Housing Trust. Big Sky Housing Trust.
It'd be worth
David,
it.
like if you want to have a copy, it's a pretty good time.
Oh, the Housing Trust website.
You would go with David in.
What's the AMI? Like, remember you were talking about
The missing middle.
yeah.
I don't have the rainbow chart. There's a rainbow chart that everyone can see.
Yeah, so if you just look at the average median income, there's the here I can afford to buy a house.
Mhm.
Then there's down in the bottom, it's like, okay, if you're like really low, 25, 35, 40%, you get into section 8 or 42 housing and blah, blah, blah. And then there's like this whole middle. I'm a school teacher. I work at the hospital. That's the forgotten middle. There's programs that cover below. And then above that, you can start to get to the point where you can buy something. But those people that you would argue really you need to address the most are kind of missing from the equation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
They found that. I just
60 to 80, probably I want to say 60 to 80.
I've got
is-
it right here. It's 100 to 250% of AMI is our
That was
that's what
that
Norfolk's targeting.
Okay.
And the thing we run into in Big Sky, cost of living is so high, we don't qualify for a lot of federal funds because we are paying higher wages. But it's all relative because it's so expensive to live in these rural communities.
But if you want a really good $42 hamburger.
It's okay, yeah. And then this is like middle management, 100 to 250 of AMI. Can't buy a house or, just because it's so $800,000.
Wow, that's a really high.
Big Sky.
But what ours shows, I mean, we're at a smaller scale, right? Our prices, our median is 1.2 million, but our need shows. For purchase homes at 80 to 250 actually, until you hit 250 AMI, do you actually fit in the market and Whitefish?
Yeah.
And so when you're a service community, and you have a lot of services and businesses that cater to tourism, those jobs aren't professional level jobs, and that there is this, we found, rentals at that 70 to 80% are really needed, but that for purchase home buying, we used to think it was only up to 120. Now what we're really seeing is that 120% AMI, you just still miss out on this huge group of individuals too that are your young professionals, that you do want your teachers, you want your medical field staff, your firefighters, your police officers to be able to still purchase within the community. And so it sounds like our housing bridges are the same, just like the dollar amounts, like a quarter or maybe even smaller than that, like 10% yours. But it's still pretty similar in that missing middle part.
Well, the other thing we have one way in and one way out of Big Sky, literally, and 70 to 80% of our workforce incommutes. So the traffic issue gets addressed if we're able to get more people that actually live in the community, but it's
And it helps the schools, and it helps,
we have declining enrollment in
Yeah.
our school right now. It's a scary situation. Namely like more in the elementary age, but we're losing a lot of folks that are moving to both. These are our teachers and our firefighters and the people that make the world go around.
The median home price according to Zillow is 2.6 million.
There you go.
Wow.
So,
It's not for everyone, but if you're looking to go big and maybe address what would otherwise take forever to save up, it's a good way to take advantage of your future collections. And
Or if you get hold of a time machine.
Well, the other thing that
Go back 30, 40 years.
the other thing we've all witnessed is the cost of a project today in 5 years is going to be 1.5x probably.
I don't know, we're finding out that our construction projects right now are actually coming in under projections pretty much across the board, that they're yeah, we're doing really well on our projects this year.
Sounds like we should build a house in Red Lodge.
Yeah.
You should, yes, absolutely. It just, it's kind of, it's peaked out, maybe there's not as many projects that are out there, but I think we've got water, stormwater and sewer, all three going on right now, every one of them came in under the engineer, under what the PER projected it to be.
Yeah, I think your best deal in the water and sewer stuff is the SRF.
Absolutely.
Yeah, hands down. Which you took
It's
advantage of
amazing, yeah.
pretty heavily. What do you think your overall interest rate was on that full stack of all those different things?
So all of our SRF so far is at 2.49.
Okay.
So 2.25, but then you have like an admin.
Yeah.
So that's our interest rate.
Doesn't get better.
It's
Yeah,
great.
yeah, they're holding at 2.5%. We're just issuing an $8 million loan for our water tower that we have, and it's 2.5%, and it was 2.5%. It's been 2.5% for a very long time, actually. I think even the resort tax, when we use our resort tax for the conservation easement, which is actually a drinking water SRF loan because it secured our water source, I think it's 2.5% then too. I mean, it's been really good. Yeah. So that was in 2015. So they held that rate for all the ups and downs we've been through. That just go.
And right now, that's impressive.
Yeah. Well, I know who to call when we get but first you, and then we'll find our experts. But as you know, as we look at how we can use our 10%, and maybe it's not when we have the 10%, but if we're successful with the 10%, that's when we go and look at what that 1% could look like for our community. We haven't taken that step to even talk about acting the 1%, but I think, you know, that's a future opportunity that we could have. Land and Whitefish is limited. There's so much infill that we can do, but this is an annexation, right, into your district? Is what it looks like.
Yep, water sewer.
Your water sewer district.
Yeah.
I
think one of the biggest takeaways is we really did have a willing partner with our developer that owned the property to begin with. And they made a generous reduction in the overall appraisal price, but beyond that, like they actually assembled 12 parcels or something over time to come up with this 100-acre chunk of land that otherwise would not be available. And if you find the right partner to work with, although it's painful because as costs were escalating, what they had previously assumed, and we almost hit a breaking point at time.
Yeah, you had a lot of meetings, we'll say.
We had a lot of meetings. But in general, they were a very good partner to work with, and I think, you know, the resort tax, kind of the water and sewer piece with the SFEs, and then having the developer at the table is a winning combination.
Whitefish is the old hospital site.
Yes,
I really think that's.
Just was thinking of a question, and I don't know why I ever thought of it before, but when state reappraisals happen, does it recognize deed restrictions?
Yeah, I don't know that they actually are looking at deed restrictions, you know.
I think jury's out on that.
Because you got a piece of property that's restricted to cost of living increase every year, and we get a 30% jump to.
I would think what you'd have to do is you'd have to go appeal it on a 1-by-1 basis and say, for this reason, it's down. So I think you could probably get it, but I'm with you. I'm betting 2 nickels that they're not going out and evaluating that when they do it, but I think you could go in and get it adjusted if you own the property.
We're a petri dish on this, and I think what we have found, I think the Firelight was recently appraised that had a deed restriction on it, and I don't think there was an adjustment made on
Yeah,
deed
And
restrictions.
I've been working in that field for 30 years and that is, what a good question, yeah.
Well, it seems to me that that might be a piece of legislation we would wanna look at going forward, because
Yeah.
deed restriction, it's recorded at the county. I mean, it should be able to be picked up in the reappraisal process, and
It'd be
I think
valuable.
we would maybe wanna talk to our legislators about that coming session. Seems like it'd be an easy one to get through.
Yeah. And particularly with all the stuff they, for housing, that would absolutely.
I don't know why I never thought of it until just right now.
And the land trust, I'm curious, like Kim, with land trust or your guys' land trust. How they're monitoring that, because you know, our land trust subject to property taxes, I believe so. But are they looking to see what the values are? Cause they're also, you know, they've got their land leases on, or like for us, we have deed restrictions that they maybe take over.
They own the deed restricted property that I was just mentioning,
Yeah.
and said that they said they actually didn't have an adjustment.
They didn't, okay. Yeah, that's interesting.
Really good point.
And the housing trust is the sort that, I don't know why.
I know Senator Fern is talking about a bill that would dictate to DOR how to change the valuations around deed restricted homes, because deed restricted homes do sell at lower rates than market rate. And so he's talking about a bill that would then change like the level of property tax that that home is subjected to. And the statewide like Community Housing Trust Coalition or whatever the organization is, has been talking about this. And so I think that it's likely we might see a bill this next legislative session that addresses this very topic.
I know I am. What's the bill in that?
They said, well, if there's no other these questions or comments.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's like,
At time,
you can check, I'll take a.
take a little break,
Time for our next meeting.
take a little break, and then we'll reconvene.